All right, welcome to the Tuesday edition of Reality Check here on the home of Black Talk Media. It's WURD. I'm Charles Ellison. Welcome to 96.1 FM, 900 AM, WURDradio.com, WURD TV, WURD app. Welcome to the program. Welcome to your daily dose of public affairs, of public policy, politics here on WURD. Once again, I'm Charles Ellison. I'm your host, executive producer, also creator of Reality Check here on WURD. You can catch me at Ellison Report on Twitter.com. Also, hashtag Reality Check, hashtag Reality Check on Twitter.com, or just tag me at Ellison Report, which some of you out there already do, and I appreciate that. We're going to open up the phone lines at the top of this 10 o'clock hour here on Tuesday morning. Good morning to everyone. 215-634-8065. Toll free, it is 866-361-0900 here on Reality Check. 215-634-8065. Toll free, it is 866-361-0900 here on Reality Check. Looking at the city of Philadelphia, that's where we are. It's a home base, 96.1 FM, 900 AM in Philly proper, Greater Philly, Delaware Valley area. We have 110 homicides now. It was 109 as of the official count yesterday by Philadelphia police. 110 homicides, 110 murders in the city of Philadelphia as of today. That's the official count. Well, I'm sorry, as of yesterday. So based on the rate of things and the rate of murder in the city of Philadelphia, we anticipate, unfortunately and tragically, we anticipate more murders today, which will increase the tally tomorrow once the Philadelphia Police puts out its official count. They do that at phillypolice.com, so you get to see it just as much as I get to see it as well. Homicides are 28% above where they were this same time last year. There were 86 homicides, 86 murders in the city of Philadelphia, and at this same time last year, that was already too many, but we are not even a full, once again, we have not even completed a full 90 days in the year 2021, and we are already over 100 homicides. We are at 110 homicides, 110 murders in the city of Philadelphia. It should not go unnoticed that Philadelphia police fails miserably at its job in solving murders. So you know, just since we're on percentages and data, we have 110 murders within less than the first 90 days of the year 2021. We also have a situation where we have 28%, nearly 30% more murders than we did this same time last year. But you still have a 60% chance of getting away with murder in the city of Philadelphia, because the Philadelphia Police Department is just terrible at solving homicides. And so the homicide closure rate is 40%. You have a 60% chance of getting, you have a higher chance of getting away with murder, especially if you kill a black person in the city of Philadelphia. Especially, let me repeat that, because if you kill a white person in Philly, you have a very high chance of getting caught. But especially if you kill another black individual in the city of Philadelphia, it's a very high likelihood you will not get caught. So not only do you have I don't have the data point for that, but that's probably higher. I would assume that that's higher than 60%. I didn't calculate that math. I will do that. Maybe I'll share that tomorrow. You know, how much of a chance or how much likelihood do you have of getting away with the murder of a black individual in the city of Philadelphia? And I don't say that facetiously. I'm not saying that in a joking manner. I think that's another key data point we should put out there. So since the city doesn't care much about its black residents on a number of levels and fronts, and it shows in the way that it's non-responsive in the homicide rate. It will start getting responsive, of course, once we, once people start, begging for a tough on crime approach. And then, many of us particularly those of us in that reform space, we're not going to like when people make those decisions to suddenly become tough, tough on crime in the city of Philadelphia and in many other cities nationwide. So far we've had 383 shooting victims as well, non-fatal firearm injuries in the city of Philadelphia. That's 49% higher than what it was the same time last year. There have been 695 shooting incidents. That's over 36% more than what happened the same time last year. So this is all unfolding in the city of Philadelphia, and also you have these types of trends unfolding in other major cities throughout the United States. And state, local, federal officials, elected officials, particularly black elected officials, are really going to have to start talking to one another in different cities and figuring out ways to alleviate or reduce violent crime that's happening, that's exploding in their cities, and start, coming up with viable plans rather than waiting on someone to do it for us and to do it in a way that we will not like. But that's not happening. That has not been taking place as of yet. 215-634-8065, toll free 866-361-0900 here on Reality Check. Before I get to the phone lines, also I had this very tragic mass shooting happening in Boulder, Colorado. 10 killed, including one police officer who was responding to the scene. Suspect in custody. That's something I'm getting very tired of and frustrated with, just fatigued by, when these mass shootings happen, particularly from armed, lunatic, mass shooting white terrorists, and they're always in custody. I'm just up to here with that. Like, I'm done with that. And, note to police, whether this is Philadelphia police hearing this, or any police or retired police who can talk to their current police friends who are still active duty. Maybe if y'all would start like killing, mass shooting, terroristic, heavily armed terrorists on the spot, maybe then they'd stop mass shooting. Maybe then they'd stop mass shooting. Because right now, as it stands, you have a better chance as a heavily armed white man who just walks into a crowded store and just mowing down everyone. You have a very high chance of surviving that incident once the police respond to it. That's a fact. Like, actually, several years ago, the FBI broke that down. Yeah, you know what? As a matter of fact, white mass shooting terrorists or murderers, they actually survive those incidents. They may get injured, but they survive it. Like, why don't y'all start killing these folks on the spot? Like, sending a message, hey, listen, like, we don't tolerate terrorists. Like, we don't tolerate domestic terrorists. So you do this, these are the consequences. And maybe, folks, maybe they'd stop mass shooting for once. Maybe then, I might want to think twice about that. Maybe I might want to think twice about walking into a crowded store where there's innocent people walking around and mass shooting them. But see, it keeps happening over and over again. And one of the reasons, and I'm having that conversation. This is a hill to die on. One of the key reasons why they keep on doing it is because police, they'll definitely kill us, folks of a darker persuasion, just for mistaking a cell phone for a firearm. They'll kill us in cold blood, right? They'll kill us in cold blood even after we say, hey, like, we'll put our hands in the air and like, or put our hands on the dashboard. Like, but they just, for some reason, like, police officers have this, I don't know, they have some spiritual connection with mass shooters, and they just refuse to kill them on the spot. Like, knock them out on it. It's a war. It really is. These things are increasing in frequency, and they're just piling up. And so the message that's being sent is, this is okay, because when it happens, you won't suffer the most grave consequence, which is losing your life. No, they know, the terrorists know, that's what they are, they're terrorists. It's the same thing. It's the same thing as like folks in the Middle East, like ISIS or whatever. They're doing the exact same thing. Just because they're white doesn't mean that they're not terrorists. They know that they can do these things and pretty much get away with it. Because they're going to end up, even if they get in jail, they're going to get state-of-the-art medical care. if they get injured. Then after they get state-of-the-art medical care, then they'll get a jury trial. So just like everyone else gets, for committing whatever kinds of crime. And, if they go to a prison for the rest of their life, well, at least they get 3 square meals a day and they get a bed. So it's like they know that they're not going to suffer the gravest consequence, which is losing their life for doing something so evil and terroristic in the first place. And police just refuse to kill these people on the spot. Like, it's like if there was a mass shooter in Center City, Philadelphia today, white dude just shows up, because Pennsylvania is such a big gun state. Like, would Philadelphia police even just kill the guy, the terrorist, on the spot? Like the same way U.S. military troops kill terrorists on the spot in places like Afghanistan or Syria or elsewhere. They are at that same level. This is you just heard the Homeland Security Secretary the other day say domestic terrorism is our highest is our gravest, it is our most dangerous national security threat that's happening right now. That is the gravest national security threat to the United States at this moment in time. And these fools still let these cats survive these incidents. That's the common denominator that links all of these different mass shootings, is these terroristic, heavily armed, lunatic white guys always survive these incidents. And that has to stop. That has to stop. Like, send the message. Yo, this is unacceptable. Oh, this is a war. Y'all on the front line. You will get killed when you do this because you should not be doing this. This is a national security threat. And police are just not treating it that way. All right, let me go to the phone lines. Maurice out of Southwest is calling in for a reality check. Maurice?
Charles, are you advocating murder?
No, I'm saying that I'm advocating fighting back terrorists. No, I'm not doing that, Maurice. I'm not doing that, Maurice. I'm not doing that. I'm saying they're terrorists. So it's just the same thing. It's a war. It's a war. They're domestic terrorists. That's all I'm advocating. I don't put words in my mouth. But go ahead. Ask your question, Maurice.
You went on a rant. I was being funny. I was making a joke, Charles.
All right, well, go ahead.
I know you better than that.
I'm not in a joking mood. I'm not.
Well, you're going to have to be, because the white man is not going to kill the white man. Now, you get a reality check on that one. All right? What we need to do is strap up.
They do, in times of war, and this is a domestic terrorist incident, maybe they need to have that mindset. Maybe so they keep it from stop happening. But go ahead. What's your question, Maurice?
You're talking against yourself, Charles. What we need to do is strap up and stop playing. We're doing the wrong thing. We're turning in our guns. Law-abiding black gun owners need to keep their guns. We need to put them in gun safes. We need to know how to handle guns. We need to open up our own shooting ranges. When white cops come in our neighborhood, unless they're law-abiding, they're not going to get treated by law-abiding citizens. If we start
I'm not going to advocate. I'm not going to advocate people strapping up. I'm going to advocate that there are already systems and institutions in place that we work hard for, and through our taxpayer dollars we fund, and we should demand it. No, but we're not having a national conversation putting demands on police to be much more aggressive when they're responding to domestic terrorists.
Charles,
full stop. But we're not having that. Why are we going from one extreme to the next, Maurice? I'm not going to advocate for that. So you have a bunch of people, you have a bunch of households with guns locked up in their house, and then suddenly kids are getting to it. You see how people in Philly don't know how to handle guns when they buy them? Because then kids end up finding the guns and then shooting themselves in the head. So yeah, I want to advocate more black people having guns in their house, and then black people who have guns in their house in a place like Philadelphia, they can't even keep the kids, they can't even hide the guns properly or keep them safe or locked up from the kids. That's a great answer, Maurice, creating another crisis.
Charles, can you keep your hand off the mute button for a minute? Charles.
Go ahead, Maurice.
Yeah, because every time somebody try to talk to you, you over-talk when you put your hand on the mute button.
Not every time somebody. That's you. You had that problem.
Well, that's me then. I'm just trying to have a conversation.
Stop hitting on everybody, Maurice. That's you.
I'm not trying to fight with you, Charles.
Go ahead.
I'm actually agreeing with you, but you think you're so high acidity that you got to keep in. You think you can think more than the average person.
I'm angry. I'm justified angry about the state of things, and I'm not in a joking mood.
Go ahead. Always getting the saying. I'm saying if we do what law-abiding citizens do out in the suburbs, they're allowed to have their guns. We need to have gun safes. We need to follow gun laws. But every time they put out new gun laws, they use that against black people. They don't use it against white people. They put that against us.
Mm-hmm.
You know,
No, I do. I do.
I
You
can't
are
even
right
buy
on
a
that
gun
one.
in my neighborhood.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Your gun, you know, they don't have any ammunition. You know, in the city of Philadelphia, you can't even buy ammunition because there is no ammunition in Philadelphia. The gun prices in Philadelphia are $200 more than if I go out to the suburbs. This is what they're doing to black people. They're making sure that black people can't have guns, but white folks can. It's working in reverse.
Maurice, I appreciate the point. You did make your point. It's an interesting point. I personally, my own personal kind of stand on that is I'm not going to advocate for like just more like gun build up. But go ahead. What were you saying now? Real quick, finish your point so I can.
What I'm trying to say is, Charles, when somebody tries to have intelligent conversation with you, you try to overtalk people. I'm not trying to argue with
Maurice,
you.
that's you. That's you. Because first of all, sometimes, Maurice, when you make your points, you make your points like 2, 3, 4 times over. So what I'm going to let you make your point. If people start getting redundant, like you've already made your point. So then I'm going to go ahead and jump in with my point. The other thing is you keep saying everybody. That's you. Because that's not the case that I do that with everyone. I'm very cognizant and aware of when I jump in and I'm making a point or when I'm arguing or having a debate with someone. Maurice, I gotta let you go. I'm sorry, no, I'm not. I'm not in a joking manner about this. So maybe I don't know if people want me to be in a joking manner. None of this stuff is joking. It's not a joke to me. I don't do it just because it's like, oh, hey, let's have an exciting talk radio conversation today. No, it's just these are points that have to be made. These are conversations that need to happen, and we really need to demand better from these institutions that are draining our taxpayer dollars. And so I, as a taxpayer, I expect my police or the police that I'm paying for through my taxpayer dollars to more aggressively respond to domestic terrorists at a time when we're at high alert due to racist-driven white nationalistic terrorism. I want an aggressive response when these things happen, like what happened in Boulder, Colorado yesterday. Real quick, I'm going to take Bobby out of Southwest. Bobby?
Thank you. Good morning, Sir Charles.
Hey, good morning, Ms. Bobby.
You have a very good point. You have an excellent point. And the truth is, 9 times out of when white people, men or whoever it is that shoot and kill a lot of black people, so they're not going to kill them because you got to go back and remember, you got a lot of racist officers here in Philadelphia or wherever worldwide, and you don't know who the racist is. So it's just like that young man that did all that killing at the church, and they took him to McDonald's. That's telling the world we really don't care. We'll come get him, but we really don't care that you're killing up black people, as long as you don't kill up white. So I agree with you. It's a horrible world we live in, and we're paying taxes, and we can't get services and protections and stuff. They're not our fault. This is what I'm calling too about. With this issue with reparations, thank God it's open. And ever since in Chicago, I used to live in the area, that used to be the highest racist location in the world. But we need to, I'm requesting that somehow, and I'm sorry, WURD, I'm going to use you as a lead. I'm asking you guys to think about bringing people together to talk about restoration, what it means, and what we want out of it, and who's going to be representing us as a people, because all of black America can't go. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Ms. Bobby. Appreciate your points this morning. Thanks for listening in. So everyone, thanks for listening. Thank you, too, Maurice, for listening as well. I appreciate when you listen in and when you call in sometimes, but, you're going to give me a hard time from time to time. I'm going to give you a hard time. So, I don't, that just is something I slept on since that shooting, very tragic shooting, and I feel real saddened by what happened in Boulder. I'm saddened all the time when these types of terrorist events happen, and I just get infuriated, and I kept sleeping on it, and I couldn't get past the anger. Why did these mass shooters, why do these terrorists keep surviving? Like, I don't want to read another news article or see another news headline or watch another segment on cable TV and it says suspect in custody. I'm tired of seeing that. I'm tired of seeing it. Aren't you? I'm tired of seeing that. And so I worry if, say, something like that happens in, like, for example, my hometown or your hometown, what will the police response be like? And maybe we need to start having that conversation right now with our respective police departments. Hey, you know, what will your response be in a situation like this? Are you going to let the suspect live? Because we're on high alert right now. This is serious stuff. This is not just a random crime or random like street violence. This is serious stuff that's happening right now. We're looking at a moment. We're teasing through a moment of political tension and instability, and these mass shootings are happening more frequently than not. And so there has to be a much more decisive response, and it has to send a message to prevent future occurrences like that from happening. That's what I'm saying. We need to have that conversation. I'm willing to have that conversation. We need to have it right now. I'm sorry, Mike, thanks for your patience. Let me go ahead and take a quick break, and then when we come back, we're going to talk about vaccine hesitancy. That's coming up next here on Reality Check 96.1 FM, 900 AM, WURDradio.com, WURD TV, WURD app. Stay tuned. We'll be right back.
Attention WURD audience, do you know that you can get help with your PICO energy bill? PICO is here to help you with financial help through various assistance programs, including the PICO CAP program, which provides a monthly credit for eligible low-income customers based on the customer's total household gross income and energy usage. If you are experiencing financial hardship, you may qualify for the PICO CAP program.
And PICO Cares is the customer assistance and referral evaluation service designed to assist special needs, low-income customers who have a temporary personal or financial hardship that prevents the payment of your PICO energy bill. If you have a special needs child or adult in your care, your household may qualify for the CARES program.
Call 1-800-774-7040 today to see if you qualify due to an existing situation or a change in circumstances within your household. Call 1-800-774-7040 today for more information on the PICO CAP or PICO Cares program. PICO, powering our communities.
Mars Care is a home healthcare leader in the community that invests in the success of our women. Happy Women's History Month. We are offering sign-on bonuses of $3,500 for RNs, $2,500 for LPNs, and $1,000 for aides. But wait, we provide generous pay, quality health benefits, professional development opportunities, and additional monetary incentives. Contact us at 215-763-3992 or marscare.com to learn more.
Reality Check with Charles Ellison right now on WURD Radio and WURDradio.com.
All right, welcome back to Reality Check here on 96.1 FM, 900 AM in Philly proper, but throughout the nation, throughout the world, you're tuning into us at WURDradio.com, also WURD TV. You're at youtube.com/onWURD, facebook.com/4WURD. Joining us now is Esther Jones. She is Associate Provost and Dean of the Faculty at Clark University. Also, she is Franklin Frazier Chair of African American Literature, Theory, and Culture there as well. She had recently published an analysis entitled "Many Black Americans Aren't Rushing to Get the COVID-19 Vaccine. A Long History of Medical Abuse Suggests Why." You can see that at the conversation, at theconversation.com for more there. And more on Clark University, clarku.edu. Professor, how are you doing? Good to see you this morning.
I'm doing well. Thank you very much for the invitation.
All right, excellent. So why is there such a focus, you think, on Black vaccine hesitancy right now?
Well, I mean, part of the challenge is that, you know, as you're likely aware, you know, the pandemic situation is such that there's a need to achieve what some are calling herd immunity. And admittedly, there's been a focus on the numbers of people who are willing to get the vaccine as part of it. With African Americans, we know that there's a history, as I outlined in the article, of medical abuse that actually causes Black people to be more deliberative in their process of decision making. Some people read this as Black people being anti-vaxxers or reluctant to get it at all, but really what Black people are doing are just being more deliberative about their decision-making process. So there's been a lot of focus on vaccine, quote unquote, hesitancy amongst African Americans, but really it's about vaccine deliberation, getting good information, being able to access it, hearing from people that they trust, whether it's healthcare providers that they trust or community leaders that they trust. There are a host of factors that go into the decision-making process for African Americans. And the article was really designed to talk about one aspect of the medical establishment, what the medical establishment needs to know and understand in order to create more equitable access for African Americans.
Right, right. Yeah, it's a good point. I like how that's framed, or I like how you frame that. It's not really vaccine hesitancy, it's vaccine deliberation, being more deliberative, really being cautious. And everyone's cautious. I mean, what does data show you, Professor? I mean, Black people are no more cautious and deliberative than any other group, right?
Exactly. That's exactly the case. What we find, or what we see in the specific example of the COVID-19 vaccines that have come available is that, number one, we know that the information of the rollout about the efficacy and the safety of these vaccines was very confusing, right? There was a lot of confusion and a lot of misinformation that continues to kind of be rolled out. My article, for example, was picked up by an anti-vaccination organization to suggest that Black people shouldn't get vaccinated and to kind of support their argument that this is why Black people shouldn't. That's actually not what the article was arguing. What the article is arguing is that African Americans will take more deliberative action before they make a decision. So part of that factor is, seeing evidence that it actually is working, that there's good information that they can trust, and that they will have access to it once those determinations have been made, that the information is accurate, that it's not harming African American communities, because you can't escape the reality that there has been this historical and contemporary record of racism in the medical establishment. And so if you're going to focus on anything that we're learning from this, we are seeing that the more information that Black people have that is more accurate, the more willing they are to get the vaccine. And so we have quite a few African Americans. We're showing the data shows now that they are just as likely as the average American to want to get the vaccine now that they have more information of its efficacy and its safety. But they're not willing to be guinea pigs. And the history shows us why they're not willing to be guinea pigs.
That openly cautious or deliberative conversation that we're having as Black people about vaccine, does it still, on some levels, does it still feel problematic, because of maybe, or is there something about the tone of it that becomes problematic? Like I regularly on this program will deal with that. Sometimes listeners will call in and they'll announce that, they're not willing to take this vaccine for a variety of reasons, and they're very vocal about it. And sometimes you have people out there who will encourage other people in the community not to take it, or you'll have public figures in the community who will they'll do one of two things: either they'll play both sides of the debate, where they'll say, well, I understand what you're saying, and anyone who wants it, it's available. Like, no, we got to get to end this pandemic now. So, or they'll just outright say, you know what, Black people should not take this. And so, are there problematic aspects or elements to this conversation, or aspects of it, the tone of it, which cause you to sort of cringe or cause you to sort of pause and think that, maybe this conversation, this open cautiousness, is not being carried out as responsibly as it should be?
Yeah, I certainly would agree that, that it is the case that the way in which these conversations are framed can certainly be problematic. And part of what I try to do is I try to give the fuller context around decision-making processes and what needs to go into that, right? And so certainly, I think that just like many populations, there are some African Americans who are anti-vaxxers, and they use or they think about this history of a medical abuse and the contemporary moment of medical abuse as kind of the logic for that, right? And I don't have percentages on what percentage of the population that is, but I think we can look at the percentages of African Americans who have said that they are willing and do want the vaccination and they can get access to it, right? So in those polls that we have seen most recently, we do have evidence that, that is on par. That is with parity, numbers of African Americans who actually want the vaccine if they can get access to it, as being on par, if not a little bit higher than, their white counterparts. And that has shifted over time from when the vaccines originally rolled out in early December to now. There has been an upward trajectory of that desire to get vaccinated by a significant proportion of African Americans. So just as with any population, there are going to be some African Americans who are anti-vaxxers, who don't trust vaccines, but that's a proportion of the population. And what the evidence would suggest at this point is that a significant proportion of African Americans are taking a number of factors into consideration and being deliberative and saying, okay, based on the information that we have available now about the vaccine's efficacy, about its safety, there are processes in place that allow me access and availability. If I can get it, I want to get it. And that's the evidence that we're seeing now.
Right, exactly. And it's not, I wrote about this, did a joint op-ed with former Chief Public Health Officer of the District of Columbia, Dr. Ivan Walks, that just was featured in the Philadelphia Inquirer or last weekend in the Sunday edition. But, one thing we were talking about is that just because Black communities are, justifiably so, having this conversation, they're being deliberative, they're being cautious, that doesn't mean public health officials or elected officials or mayors and governors should then make assumptions or make decisions about equitable vaccine distribution based on that conversation. That's not their job to do. That's not their business. Exactly. Their business is, as public health officials, as elected officials, as governments, is to simply distribute the vaccine equitably and do whatever they're supposed to do to protect populations. Full stop. That's it. And so, I just want to get your thoughts on that too, Professor, where, how are we seeing governments like state, local, also a bit of federal, how are they reacting to that Black deliberative conversation about vaccine, or just the general Black vaccine population? Because the way, for example, you had the governor of Maryland, Republican Governor Larry Hogan, where he was saying, well, I've been hearing a lot of Black people don't want this vaccine anyway. So that's why when people were asking him, hey, why are more white people in the state getting vaccine, but the people getting disproportionately impacted by COVID, who are getting infected and dying the most from this, are Black people? Oh, well, they don't want it anyway. That's not your business. That's not your business to make subjective interpretations of an open conversation that people rightfully are having about, like, hey, okay, well, we're cautious. We're going to eventually take it, but we're just cautious about this.
Well, yeah, to your point, that is precisely, my position is that on the one hand, Black people are perfectly well within their rights, and it only makes good sense to be deliberative consumers of whatever is being offered and to make decisions based on the best available information that they have. That does not give governments or the healthcare system a pass on doing what they should do in order to provide access to public health measures, including vaccinations that are supposed to be made broadly available. So it is really incumbent upon the government and healthcare systems to learn and understand this history and the contemporary realities, not to dismiss their responsibility, but actually to deliver better the healthcare services that are needed so that they can understand what's happening in communities, so that they can deliver the information that these communities need in the culturally relevant way that these communities need, with medical professionals these people can trust, as well as community leaders who they can trust, right? And acknowledge that it's their job to provide access.
Right.
It's their job to provide access to communities of color in ways that do not create barriers, which is what we see happening. So again, to your point, it's not an either or kind of situation where, you have to, our public health system gets a pass on offering opportunities for communities of color to get access. It's their responsibility to do that, not make subjective interpretations, as you say, about the reasons why Black people in particular are going to be more deliberative about their decision-making process. That doesn't translate into not getting the vaccine in the end, or not wanting to get the vaccine.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. We've been talking with Esther Jones. She is at Clark University. She's Associate Provost and Dean of the Faculty there at Clark University. And she is E. Franklin Frazier Chair of African American Literature, Theory, and Culture. For more on her, you can go to @Esther L. Jones on Twitter, on social media. Also, clarku.edu for more on Clark University, based in Worcester, Massachusetts, if I'm not mistaken. So always, it's a pleasure to have you on, Professor Jones. So we have to have you back with this discussion or other discussions as well. So keep us posted. The
pleasure is all mine. Thank you for the opportunity.
All right. Thank you. Take care. Be safe. All right. Let's take a break. When we come back, we'll just go back to open phone lines. We may have a few folks who are holding on patiently. So let's go ahead and take a break. 215-634-8065, 866-361-0900 here on Reality Check. Let's take a break. We'll be right back.
COVID-19 has highlighted the need for digital equity and internet adoption programs. Comcast's Internet Essentials program is designed to connect families to low-cost, high-speed internet and laptops so students can be ready for anything. Since 2011, Comcast has connected 4 million students from low-income families to the internet through its Internet Essentials program. Learn more about how Internet Essentials is connecting students.
You probably heard it before, but one of the best ways to stay safe from COVID is by avoiding crowds. That's better. Also, when you're out in public, make sure you stay 6 feet away from strangers or people you don't live with. It's okay to say, "Can I have some space, please?"
Well, it's going to be a beautiful sunny day today, and we can expect much.
If you're going to have a get-together with friends and family, have it outside. And remember to keep those 6 feet of social distance. And last but not least, wear a mask that covers your nose and mouth with no gaps. They slow the spread of COVID or new forms of the virus called variants. And make sure you get your vaccine when it's your turn. We're all out here trying our best, and it's making a difference. We just gotta keep it up. We can do this.
To learn more about slowing the spread, visit cdc.gov/coronavirus. Brought to you by the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services.
This Women's History Month, WURD Radio is proud to celebrate Black women innovators and trailblazers who have helped us all level up.
Trailblazing Black woman Roz Brewer is an American businesswoman and Spelman grad who is slated to become the CEO of Walgreens, which will make her the first Black female CEO of a Fortune 500 company. Brewer started her career at Kimberly-Clark Corporation as a scientist. She eventually advanced to vice president of the global nonwoven sector in 2004, eventually moving on to regional VP of Walmart in Georgia. In 2012, she was named president and CEO of Sam's Club, becoming the first African American to lead a Walmart division. She focused on health and wellness by doubling the amount of organic products offered at Sam's Clubs. She is currently the COO of Starbucks, and in 2018, she was listed as the 34th in Forbes' ranking of the most powerful women.
This Women's History Month vignette was brought to you by AARP Pennsylvania, PICO Powering Communities, and Jefferson Health, improving lives by redefining exceptional and safe care, because now more than ever, your health can't wait. Call 1-800-JEFF now today.
Reality Check with Charles Ellison right now on WURD Radio and WURDradio.com.
All right, welcome back to Reality Check. Phone lines are open, 215-634-8065, 866-361-0900 here on Reality Check. Hakeem out of South Philly has been waiting patiently for Reality Check. Hakeem?
Hey, Charles, how you doing?
Hey, how are you doing?
Hey, so I was on 295 coming from work, and I was really disturbed by the statistics on that if you're black, that you said that, wait, I'm trying to get it right here, that if you are black, that you could be killed, and you basically if you're black living in the city of Philadelphia, you could be killed, or you could be something like this that you had said. That I was just like, wow. As I was driving down 295, man, I'm like, listening to it, like, wow. It was just, facts are facts. I mean, it's, when I watch the news every night in the afternoon, we see who's being killed in the city. It's mostly us, man. And it is definitely a shame. It's a shame. In the city, we have a commissioner who doesn't have a plan. We have a mayor who doesn't have a plan. We have city council who does not have a plan for this, man. Like, what are they doing? What are we electing them for? You know what I'm saying? Like, how you don't have a plan for the gun epidemic or gun pandemic, we should say. You know what I'm saying? Like, it's crazy. Maybe we do need to they need to bring back stop and frisk. Maybe they do, Charles. I don't know. But, what do you feel on that? Because no one has a plan. No one. It's sad, man. Really sad.
I don't think that means that we have to go back. Because, so what we do know about some of those traditional methods, let's call them traditional methods that have been used for quite a long time, like stop and frisk, for example. We understand that stop and frisk over time, it really doesn't reduce the violent crime. It doesn't get to the root cause of the violent crime, and it doesn't really effectively reduce the violent crime or long-term reduce the violent crime the way we need it to. We do know that making investments in those communities, we know that works. We do know that other smart, targeted strategies for everything from, more, like I've advocated for this, things that are inexpensive, like cleaning up neighborhoods, to beautification of neighborhoods, to, making investments in, particularly for young people in jobs programs. And like direct jobs programs, like all year round, or maybe during the summer when they're out of school or whatever. We do know that those things work, and they work on a long-term basis in terms of reducing crime. But, I think there has to be a balance. There has to be a balance between that reform approach, because we need that reform, and also the public safety. I don't think it's stop and frisk, because then suddenly you get into the over-incarceration of folks, and we go back to just relying on strategies that weren't really proven to begin with.
Right, Charles, and let me say this, right? When I came home from jail, from prison, 2007, I haven't been back to jail since. I just came up with a plan, man, that, like, I have a family out here, I have children that need me, that I have to take care of, and, I haven't been back since. And I had a job since I've been home. I've been sold, water to a well. That's what I used to do before, with Joe and stuff. So there's jobs out there. If you really want a job, there's jobs. So, people can't use that excuse no more, because since I've been home, I had many jobs, man, many jobs. And I just took a chance on myself that, to be patient, that it's not always about that quick, fast money, because that's what I was used to. It's so quick and fast that, you'll wind up either dead. And my father used to say, that money, you'll either wind up in jail. And, You know, sometimes jail could be a blessing for some people because you go out here in the street and man, you get killed. And then, then what? So, but Charles, thanks for accepting my phone call, man. I really love your show. Keep doing the good work, brother. Thank you.
Hey, thanks so much, Hakeem. Thanks for calling. Thanks for sharing that, too. 215-634-8065, 866-361-0900 here on Reality Check. 215-634-8065, 866-361-0900 here on Reality Check. Let me clarify something here, too. I'm not advocating, going back to what Maurice was saying, and just in case somebody's, any folks out there are kind of misunderstanding kind of where I'm coming from here as far as how to respond to domestic terrorists. Okay, like even we're having this conversation about white supremacy. It's not white supremacy. It's going back to what a brother was saying, brother out of Logan was saying yesterday. Let's stop calling it white supremacy. It's white terrorism. It's terrorism. It's terrorism. It's the exact same level of terrorism. And I know this is someone who is a student. I do it as a hobby. I study military history extensively, and I've studied over the years how wars are caused, how insurgencies happen, how terrorists behave. I do that. We bring some of those people sometimes on this program to help people understand that what's happening now, what we saw happen on January 6th, that was not a riot. That was an insurgency. I had an expert come on here to talk about how we are at a high level of alert right now. We are faced with a very grave threat, and it is called domestic terrorism. What happened in Boulder, Colorado yesterday was domestic terrorism. It is a part of that larger threat that we're all seeing. We're seeing it bubble up. We've been seeing it accelerate and increase with maddening frequency, not just in this past month, but especially over the past several years. Domestic terror incidents had actually been on the increase, particularly while Trump was president. And we have to figure out a way. We have to make sure that we have a very decisive and a very aggressive, not just military response, not just homeland security response. It has to be state and local law enforcement have to also be on the same page as homeland security. It can't be, let's just go ahead and respond to this and react to this like any other average violent crime that's happening in, say, a city of neighborhoods like Philadelphia. No, this is a mass shooting incident where someone's heavily armed. They are using in that moment of mass terror, they're utilizing high-powered automatic, semi-automatic weapons. They're heavily armed. There has to be a decisive response to that based on now there are new rules of engagement. It's like, basically, I'm arguing for newer rules of engagement, or sort of refreshing on rules of engagement when we are responding to domestic terrorists. They had more sense back then. Back in 1871, Congress, and then Congress and the federal government actually got state and local governments on board with this. So state and local governments at that time, post-Civil War, knew that, hey, listen, we have got to stamp out, we have got to eliminate. They knew this at that time. The federal government knew this at that time. And it actually worked for a very short period of time. We have got to eliminate. And guess what? They called it back then domestic terrorism. They had more sense back then in the late 19th century to call it what it was, domestic terrorism, than we do now. We make fun of people that living back then. They had more sense and education and frankly, more courage back then. And these were even white people who were making that decision. And it were like white radicals, white progressive radicals, teaming up with formerly enslaved black people and saying, hey, listen, you know what? This country has to take a new turn. We have a national security threat post-Civil War. We just got finished with this Civil War that killed 800,000 people. We don't want this to keep continuing. Let's stamp out the threat now. They passed a law, y'all, that's still on the books. Didn't you just hear me about a month ago? The NAACP, along with black members of Congress, just sued Donald Trump and Rudy Giuliani. They're in a federal lawsuit right now utilizing that same law that designated the Ku Klux Klan as domestic terrorists, It's the Ku Klux Klan Act of 1871. They had sense back then. That law is still on the books. State and local law enforcement has got to be on the same page as federal law enforcement. And when these moments happen and they respond to these scenes, they have got to be decisive, and they've got to understand that we are at a high level of alert, that there is a domestic war brewing, and that these folks are terrorists and should be treated accordingly, not taken into custody. It's not the environment, the climate that we're in right now. I mean, if we really truly want us to survive through this thing, that's what's going to have to happen. They understood that back then in the late 19th century. And no, the answer is not, oh, let's just all arm up and buy more guns. We just, in Philadelphia, we already have seen tragic instances of children finding these, like, Philly, you guys in Philly especially, and elsewhere in other places, y'all, you should not be buying guns and putting them in your homes, because y'all don't know how to take care of guns in the first place. And I'm not an advocate. I'm not a gun owner personally, and I'm not going to own a gun. I'm not bringing a gun. I know how to defend myself, and I know how, and I have, in our household, make sure folks know martial arts and all that stuff. But I'm not going to advocate for people to just mass arm up. No, we have institutions in place that are supposed to protect us, serve and protect. We pay them to do that. And we're supposed to, and it's our job, instead of, advocating for people to go buy guns or walk around with guns that you don't know how to use and you don't know how to keep away from your kids, why don't you start having a conversation about putting pressure on the institutions that you pay with your hard-earned dollars to protect you in those moments? Because they got cameras and surveillance all over the place. They know how to find us on social media or see when we're saying things against cops on social media. Well, then use that same damn social media and find out when they're about to attack the U.S. Capitol, or when they're about to attack, because I bet you that you'll probably find something. Once they investigate it deeper, they'll probably find that this dude who's in custody in Boulder, Colorado, they'll probably find out he was on Reddit or something with his buddies on social media talking about how they were going to carry out the next mass terror attack, because things are coordinated now. So it's not about buying more guns and that's just putting more fuel on the fire. That's going to make it worse. No, we have a $5 trillion federal government, $5 trillion that we know of, that they have an annual budget. We've got a $1 trillion military. We've got the FBI. We've got the Defense Intelligence Agency. We've got the Central Intelligence Agency. We got the Department of Homeland Security. We got all kinds of agencies, all specifically dedicated to assessing, evaluating, and responding decisively to national security threats like domestic terror. Make sure you put pressure on those institutions that we pay, that I pay for, that you pay for, to make sure that they're doing their damn job. That's what I'm saying. That's what I'm talking about. Because if we don't, this is going to happen over and over again. And not only is it going to happen over and over again, but then we're looking at, we're looking at like not just mass terror events, but we're looking at a complete breakdown of society. We're looking at complete destabilization, or a destabilization event. So that's what I'm advocating for. And I don't think that that's wrong, because it's the Constitution. The Constitution provides those rights for us. We have state, local, federal government agencies which take oaths. I've worked for those institutes. Sometimes I've had to take those oaths. And it's there. They are sworn, those state, local, federal law enforcement, they're sworn to protect us. They're sworn to also prevent those threats from happening. That's all. It's all about threat prevention. This is like really serious stuff. So in addition to, we already have this problem with, just massive, and in fact, I just told you all about a couple of weeks ago, where there were a couple of political scientists that were doing a study on how, like, the rising, not just the rising incidence of mass terror, but also rising violence that we're seeing spiking in cities like Philadelphia. It is a reflection of political instability, of ideological tensions that we're seeing, hyper-partisan partisanship. So we've got to figure this out. We have got to figure, and there are ways to figure this out. That's the thing. There are ways to figure this out. Like, use the tools and the institutions and the elected officials that are there, that are at our disposal. Stop getting so frustrated at them, and then figure out how to leverage them. To leverage those are tools, and we're not yet. That's the thing. You know, we get all frustrated. We're like, oh, let's go buy guns. Like, are you crazy? Are y'all stupid? You know, like, no, that's not the way. Like, use what's already available and what we're already paying for. We're already paying for that stuff. So use it. Let me go ahead and take a break, and we'll be right back here on Reality Check, 96.1 FM, 900 AM, WURDradio.com, WURD TV, WURD app. Stay tuned. We'll be right back.
Philly Peace in Progress nonprofit organization was started to create a positive change and bring awareness to the growing drug and gun violence in Philadelphia. Philly Peace in Progress is looking for volunteers to make a change with organized programs, mentoring, problem solving, conflict resolution, and more. If you are interested, email Nelson at phillypeaceinprogress.com or call 267-529-7255.
Hey, WURD family, Reverend Leroy with a boss good recommendation for Clark Roofing. I found them to be a solid business, honest, dependable, fast, and clean workers. Mr. Clark stands by his work. Call him at 215-365-7663.
Call Clark Roofing and ask for second-generation master roofer Calvin Clark. Clark Roofing professionally installs a variety of roofing systems for your home or businesses. Call Clark Roofing at 215-365-7663 or visit their website
at clarkroofingpa.com.
The Black Words Book Club.
WURD Radio's new monthly conversation on books that explore the African American experience through social, economic, and environmental justice issues. Tune in the second Tuesday of every month on Evening Words with Nick Taliaferro, 4 p.m. till 7 p.m. For April, WURD Radio is partnering with the Free Library of Philadelphia and showcasing their pick for its annual citywide reading program, One Book, One Philadelphia, entitled The Tradition by Jericho Brown. Be sure to listen live, as Nick Taliaferro will hold a contest for a giveaway book bundle that consists of 4 titles from Kensington's Defina's Authors of Color's newest release. Don't miss it. Tuesday, April 13th on Evening Words with Nick Taliaferro. Attention for WURD members. Get your copy and receive a 20% discount when you purchase at Harriet's Bookstore or Hakeem's Bookstore. For more information on the Black Words Book Club, visit WURDradio.com. The Black Words Book Club is sponsored by Defina. Defina is an imprint of Kensington Publishing Corporation, America's independent publisher, concentrating on authors of color.
This is not a fad for us.
We will not resume our regular programming when things die down. We're not black to help our bottom line or because it's politically correct. We're not joining a fight. This has been our fight, our message, our people. Black lives have always mattered here. We are
Undeniably,
indefatigably, unapologetically, permanently Black Talk Media.
WURD.
This is WURD Radio.
96.1 FM.
And 900 AM WURD Philadelphia.
Black Talk Media. Reality Check. With Charles Ellison right now on WURD Radio and WURDradio.com.
Reality Check. We're actually scheduled to talk with Pete Saunders, so I guess we're having some trouble locating him. He was supposed to join us via Skype. We don't have him at the moment just yet, so we'll, once we get him, we'll just go ahead and bring him on. We'll keep the phone lines open in the meantime. I know it's a lot of topics ripe for discussion. 215-634-8065, 866-361-0900, 215-634-8065, toll free, 866-361-0900. Yeah, we're having some trouble, just technical issues in terms of reaching out to Pete Saunders. So I will reach out to Pete. Maybe we'll just have to get him by phone if we can't get him via Skype. He may not be realizing that he's not available by Skype at the moment, so we'll try to reach him. In the meantime, 215, we were going to keep the phone lines open anyway. We were going to have a discussion about zoning. Zoning was the discussion. I was looking forward to that. 215-634-8065, 866-361-0900 here on Reality Check. Joyce out of Germantown is calling in for a Reality Check. Joyce?
Good morning, Mr. Ellis. How are you?
Hey, good morning, Joyce. All right.
You had me going for a minute. You let Maurice pull you off your square. You was already kind of upset because I look at your facial expression. And you didn't change your facial expression, but your tone changed. Now, we have issues in Philadelphia and have had them. I was a little girl. I'm in my 60s. I was a little girl, and all the white people was in charge, and that was a problem. Now, I'm in my 60s, and as considered an older person, we got all the black people in charge. There is still a problem.
That's so problem.
If the way the system is built is messed up, why can't somebody just go back in those archives and find out what was working back then? It wasn't the people in charge. It was the laws that they put on top of the laws on top of the laws. And it's like, regardless of whether it's white, black, or in between brown, the point is center mass is what police actually deal with when they're at the academy. White people don't got center mass. So what they do, they let them walk to McDonald's. They let them walk to the jail or let them walk to the hospital. We get carried to the morgue, okay? So that need to stop. I mean, when you shoot somebody, we was always told you're supposed to have a taser, or when you shoot, try to shoot them in the leg. But no, they're still doing center mass. And I have a couple nephews that's in the police academy now. And they're still saying, center mass, Andre, see, center mass. And it's like, no, y'all need to try to do something a little bit better than that center mass, because most white people who are out here killing one another, what happens when they kill everybody? They're going to kill all the black folks, and then they're going to start on their own. And that's what they're showing us. Once we're gone, then they just kill each other. You know that's not fun.
Interesting. Yeah.
Very interesting.
No,
my 9-year-old's the one that gave me that thought. They said, what happens, Grandma, if they kill all the black people? Then they going to kill themselves?
Yeah, he makes a good point. You're right.
Yeah, he does. But have a good day, Charles, and you don't let nobody pull you off your square, because this is a very informative talk show.
It is.
And Maurice is an angry black man sitting in his house listening to the radio every day. Talk to you later.
I don't mind brothers being angry. I mean, brothers should be passionate and angry about. I mean, at least Maurice is being angry about the issues we need to be angry about. So I'll give. Definitely, I appreciate that, and I appreciate you too, Ms. Joyce. I appreciate sharing that. We've seen, even when we are around, they're still killing each other. So, look at World War I, World War II. We've seen it all throughout history. Or when colonialism was taking place, and you had those different European powers battling one another over our land, over our ancestors' land. So that's another conversation. Let me keep the phone lines open while we try to reach Pete. We're having some issues trying to reach him. Pete Saunders, urban planner, whom we bring on every couple of weeks. Bill out of Philadelphia is calling in for a reality check. Bill?
Hi. Thank you for airing me this morning. Covered quite a few issues this morning, so I want to kind of delve into a couple of them. This last one, the young lady just spoke about, quite a complicated problem when you're discussing behaviors of people and entities that exist that influence those people's behaviors.
Yeah.
And then you want an agency who is trained to deal with ill behaviors to come in and act like they're trained for something else. Law enforcement is trained to handle illegal activity, not social problems, not psychological problems, not mental illness, none of that. If you've ever been in a gunfight, and I heard you talk about a lot of your experiences, then you know center mass is essential. Anybody at the opposite end of a bullet coming their way understands that center mass will put an end to the fight.
And you can't predict you really can't predict how you're going to respond in a moment like that in a lot of occasions. And
Right.
yeah,
So,
can't predict where that bullet's going to go. Yeah.
so my point is, I'm not condoning, murder of young people in the street when you could wound them in the leg or arm and save their lives. But as somebody who stood on the other end of that, I understand how essential it is to end the fight.
Wow. Yeah, thank you for sharing that.
Yeah, and another issue, and I don't know if you guys talked about this, but the sister that was on yesterday was speaking about vaccinations and the need for people to make a decision about whether they wanted to take the Minerva, the Verva, or the Johnson & Johnson, or the Who Did It vaccine. Here's a little bit of news that you might pass on to your listening audience. The NIH, which is the National Institute of Health, revised its treatment guideline for a drug called ivermectin.
Mm-hmm.
This is the drug that Louis Gossett Jr. took that cured him of COVID. Now, there's a lot of people who don't know Louis Gossett went into Atlanta Hospital almost dying. But some doctors got together and saw that he was sick, and they instructed him to come to this hospital, and he took this particular drug, which costs $10 over the counter.
Mm-hmm.
It's called ivermectin. If you go to the SLCCC Alliance website, these are the frontline COVID Critical Care Alliance. A bunch of doctors got together and they tested every drug that was on the market before and see how they affected this COVID drug, this COVID vaccine. And they forced the National Health Institute of Health to change their assessment of it, and now it's considered a treatment, but nobody's hearing about it. Okay? All of these vaccines are part of, I hate to sound like a conspiracy nut, but the media has used that word so much and painted anybody that has a different idea as a conspiracy theorist. But this is factual information. You can go on the internet, look it up. It's the FLCCC Alliance of a bunch of doctors across this country. Some of the best immunologists in the world got together, and they did studies and tests, and they found a cure and a preventative, which already existed in our arsenal of drugs.
Let me. I'll definitely look more into it. Actually, I'll let you go too, brother. I think. Thanks for that. Just sharing that information, and also sharing the your perspective, like as far as domestic terrorism and gun violence is concerned. But that's something I definitely want to talk about, and I'm going to look a little bit deeper into it. Yeah, I know there's a lot of science out there, and there's a lot of other treatments that people are relying on as far as remedies for coronavirus, for COVID. A lot of it too is about scale. So and I've heard about some of those treatments. I also know some of those treatments are a little pricey. So we have to think about that you have certain people in public who are telling certain populations, well, instead of getting vaccinated, you should do this. It's like, okay, well, do you have money to pay for people to do these treatments? Because I'm aware that a couple of the treatments I know about, they cost money. And so it's like, if you have people like, with respect, you have people like Minister Farrakhan saying, well, don't, y'all need to take this. Okay, well, Minister, you want to flip the bill, people's health care bill, or to purchase these treatments for folks to partake in it. So it's like, if they're that effective, but to my understanding, they're also pricey. And it's not like it's, we have a situation where we're in the middle of a pandemic. We have to scale up fast to defeat the pandemic. And so, and there's also been a lot of investment made in vaccine, and that vaccine is current, and that's what public health officials and governments are supposed to do in a pandemic. They're supposed to make vaccine widely available and free. So that's taken care of. That's something that doesn't have to come out of pocket for us. But, with respect to these treatments, that's the big question mark right there. How do you scale? If they are indeed effective, and that's something I want to look into, if they are indeed effective, okay, well, how are y'all going to pay for it? Because that's the other big key. How do you pay for it? How do you make sure that it's equitably distributed and that it's it's definitely something that that people can afford, that it's affordable. But thanks for pointing that out. Let me we do have Pete Saunders on the line. Let me go to him while we got him for about maybe another 10 minutes or so here on Reality Check. We got him a little late. We'll get him next time with more time. Pete, how are you doing?
I'm doing great.
All right, good. You got us in the middle of a conversation. So sorry we couldn't reach you by Skype. I did want to ask you about, because this topic has been coming up over and over again in local politics in Philadelphia, particularly during our city council live sessions. And you're our in-house sort of urban planning expert. Zoning, right? It's a very complex, very sophisticated issue, but it affects people in a variety of ways. And when it comes to our communities, it affects our people in very negative ways. But when we talk about zoning, in your mind, based on your experience, what exactly is that? How do we explain zoning in very layman's terms?
Yeah, well, basically, zoning is local government authority to control and segregate or separate land uses. And it came about sort of at the end of the 19th century, honestly, with the goal in mind of separating new black migrants away from other groups of people in cities when Great Migration really started up in the late 19th century, early 20th century. Baltimore was one of the first cities that really put that into place. Later on, it became something to separate industrial uses from residential areas. And it was something that, for public health purposes, to move people away, to separate smokestacks from homes and to create a better quality of life for people. But it also became a tool for exclusion along the way, and became something that eventually was challenged in court. And actually, the pandemic of 100 years ago had a lot to do with that was kind of promoted the need for zoning, or the desire for zoning by municipalities. And then that brought more zoning ordinances, and survived a Supreme Court challenge in 1926, and it's been the rule since. But essentially, it's been about separating uses and separating eventually people. And it's been a tool that's been used ever since.
That's interesting too. It's kind of like the conversation on policing, or the history of policing, American policing, right? It is it is rooted in slave patrols, and basically police were created. American policing was created to capture escaped slaves. Same thing with zoning, and it's fascinating, right, Pete, that we're using this this tool that was originally designed as state sanctioned segregation. It's a racist tool.
Yeah. And it started in that way. Like I said, Baltimore actually went, I believe, to the Supreme Court in the 1910s and lost. It was deemed that they could not segregate based on race. However, it was deemed possible later on that by the Supreme Court that cities could segregate by use, and then that eventually got changed into segregation by race, and it became really the exclusionary tool, and really a tool of most of suburbs for the most part. It was the suburb of Cleveland that took the case to the Supreme Court that allowed them to do it. And they wanted to have basically single-family zoning in their community, and that became the exclusionary tool. That's how people would control who would move in. We would set the bar high enough so that new migrants would not be able to reach it, and that's been how it's been used in many ways since.
Mm. Why do governments still rely? I mean, are governments, like especially local governments, are they aware of that history? Do you think, Pete, that, especially in your experiences as an urban planner and having to, both work for cities, and I'm sure, to have to sort out zoning issues or being retained by cities acting as a consultant, like once you tell them that history, the roots of zoning, maybe they start having second thoughts and maybe they start figuring out, okay, well, maybe we need to manage, residential policy or the, how to zone different types of buildings and places or habitats. We need to do this much differently.
Right, right. Well, I think that there are cities, individuals working for cities that know about the history, and they have pursued a more inclusionary approach. And honestly, that in one respect, kind of at the heart of the way zoning is being used now in many cities, you'll hear many people talk about upzoning, that we need to have more housing. They say housing is too expensive. We need to upzone areas so we can have more housing in certain areas, more rental housing. And on the surface, that sounds like a great idea because that's something that everybody can see a need for. We want more housing, more affordable housing. However, it's been my experience that if you upzone and increase the zoning in certain areas throughout a city, let's take Chicago, for example, you upzone and allow more housing in the city, it sends a signal to the development community to build, which is good. But the development community is going to upzone in the areas where they feel like they can get the most bang for their buck. They're going to go to the most affluent areas, and they're going to build in the most affluent areas until they can build no more. And only then would they go to other areas that are in search of and in need of investment. And they will neglect those areas to the advantage of more affluent communities. And one of the things that I've always said is that you'll see places emerge, and it really takes a low-growth area to really see it. When you look at a place like Chicago, you'll get something like the North Side that becomes very dense, very affluent, and well-developed, surrounded by many other areas that are less dense and less affluent. And and that's the trick. That's the way zoning is played many ways now.
I'm talking with Pete Saunders, Chicago-based urban planning expert. There's a lot to talk with you about, Pete, and unfortunately we got to let you go because we caught you a little bit late. So let's see. I'm going to try to. We're going to look at the schedule, see if we can bring you on next week and get a proper segment with you. Because the next part of that conversation is one. How do we get the community to be more aware of zoning laws? Because one of the things, and this is why I brought you on to start this conversation, I wanted to. I've been working on, just for the audience, for them to know. I have been working on getting Councilmember Kenyatta Johnson on the program because he's introduced a few bills dealing with zoning issues in Philadelphia that residents, particularly in his district, have had an issue with. We have yet to get him on. I'm not sure what's going on with his schedule, but I really want to have this conversation for Pete for just just regular. Not regular, but just your average resident, your average, whether it's Philadelphia resident or people in other cities, because they have a very hard time tracking those types of bills or those types of policies, and so it's kind of figuring out a way, in which an elementary way, an easier way, a user-friendly way, people can track these sorts of policies, be prepared for them, and how we respond to them as a community.
Right. Yeah, I think that's a great idea. I would love to be a part of that conversation.
Absolutely. Great. So I'm going to try to get you back on next week so we can have a part 2 of this conversation and talk a little bit more extensively about it. We've been talking with Pete Saunders, whom we bring on regularly. He's also a publisher of the Corner Side Yard blog. That's the cornersideyard.blogspot.com, and got some great insights there. And great insights nationally in a number of publications talking about urban planning issues, especially as it relates to our communities, to Black communities in cities like Philadelphia, Chicago, and elsewhere. So it's always a pleasure to have him on. Pete, I'm glad we did catch you finally, but be safe out there. I'm going to try to see if we can get you on next week.
Okay. Thanks so much, Charles.
All right. Thank you, brother. All right. Take care. Be safe. All right. Let's take a break. And when we come back on the other side, we head into our strategist segment. We should have Justin Wallen coming up next with us here on Reality Check 96.1 FM 900 AM, WURDradio.com, WURD TV, WURD app. We'll be right back.
Hey there, all you ashy folk. I got the solution for your ashy skin. Nubian K Essentials all natural body lotions at www.nubiankessentials.com. Also found at Hakeem's, 210 South 52nd Street, the Wayne Avenue Health Store, 5007 Wayne Avenue, and Cultural Exchange, 1450 Point Breeze Avenue. Or go to www.nubiankessentials.com and kiss your ashy skin goodbye.
We do all we can to ensure our kids are happy, healthy, safe, and strong. Having high-quality, low-cost health insurance helps make that possible. With CHIP, your child can have medical, dental, eye care, and more for free or low cost. Whether you're self-employed, unemployed, or your employee benefits are just too expensive, CHIP is there for you to help your child be strong. CHIP Strong. Apply or renew today at 800-986-KIDS or go to chipcoverspakids.com.
Paid for with Pennsylvania taxpayer dollars.
Buying something from a dealer just sounds a bit, well, put it like this. My cousin Ray Ray got arrested for buying something from a dealer. So why would you want to buy your car from a dealer? Hi, everybody. This is Nick inviting you to buy your next car from Jerry over at Cardex. See, they're not dealers. They're like a car concierge service. They design a car around you. Almost any make. If it's not on the lot, they'll go out and get it for you. So use my car concierge, where I've already bought 4 cars, Cardex, at 116 East Glenside Avenue in Glenside, Pennsylvania. Check them out online at cardexinc.com or call Cardex at 215-886-3230.
The Black Words Book Club. WURD Radio's new monthly conversation on books that explore the African American experience through social, economic, and environmental justice issues. Tune in the second Tuesday of every month on Evening Words with Nick Taliaferro, 4 p.m. till 7 p.m. For April, WURD Radio is partnering with the Free Library of Philadelphia and showcasing their pick for its annual citywide reading program, One Book, One Philadelphia, entitled The Tradition by Jericho Brown. Be sure to listen live, as Nick Taliaferro will hold a contest for a giveaway book bundle that consists of 4 titles from Kensington's Defina's Authors of Color's newest release. Don't miss it. Tuesday, April 13th on Evening Words with Nick Taliaferro. Attention for WURD members. Get your copy and receive a 20% discount when you purchase at Harriet's Bookstore or Hakeem's Bookstore. For more information on the Black Words Book Club, visit WURDradio.com. The Black Words Book Club is sponsored by Defina. Defina is an imprint of Kensington Publishing Corporation, America's independent publisher, concentrating on authors of color. Reality Check
with Charles Ellison right now on WURD Radio
and WURDradio.com.
All right. Welcome back to Reality Check 96.1 FM 900 AM, WURDradio.com, WURD TV, WURD app. We have now joining us Justin Wallen, who is a political strategist, consultant, does opinion research. Go to jwallen.com for more on J. Wallen Research. He's out there in Southern California joining us now on Reality Check, as he occasionally does for our strategist segment. Justin, good to see you. How are you doing, man?
Good to see you, Charles. Thanks for having me on.
All right, excellent, excellent. So talk to us. We're looking at this mass shooting unfolding, the aftermath of it, this terrorist incident, really, that just unfolded in Boulder, Colorado. It's very sad, it's very tragic, and a lot of people are obviously have a lot of questions, want answers on things. We are getting breaking news as well that suspect in custody has been charged with first-degree murder. So I know there's going to be a debate that's going to be raging about why just first-degree murder. But I do want to talk to you about, well, first the topic of gun control, because just about a couple of weeks ago, the House passed a few ambitious gun control measures. Where does the public stand on that right now, Justin, from where you're standing and based on the data you're looking at?
Yeah, this is one of those things where there are areas of almost universal agreement and areas where there's just split divides. So it really depends largely on an ideological split. In terms in general of some kind of gun control reform, if you're talking about universal background checks, it seems everybody agrees that this is an important thing. If you survey gun owners, it's like 70% approval for this sort of thing. It's just off the charts. So these sorts of things seem to be easy accomplishments. Once you start getting into controlling specific kinds of weapons, and I'm going to use a term that is charged, but weapons, that's what they are, then things split along an ideological divide, along a party identification divide. When you start talking about black guns, for example, referring to things that look like an AR-15 or and anything along those lines, a semi-automatic rifle, the public gets very divided. And Republicans feel that that is a constitutional right because they view the right to bear arms differently. It's not a hunting right. Yeah, the Constitution didn't enshrine this so you could hunt rabbits, but so that you could defend yourself against tyranny. That's the Republican perspective. Democratic voters view it very differently and say these are things that really should not be in the hands of regular folk because they could do so much damage. It's just split, and it has been, and emotions are very high on that. That said, with this kind of thing, there's always a spike in concern about gun control right after a tragic incident like this, a murder, domestic terrorism, whatever you want to call it, it's vile. There's always a spike, but I'm going to say this from my perspective, sadly, that subsides within weeks after
it does, unfortunately. There's a lot to unpack there. So let me go with this. Are people intersecting the conversation or the debate on gun control with the issue of domestic terrorism? So, because we did hear the Homeland Security Secretary Andrew Mayorkas did say over the weekend on some Sunday talk shows, hey, listen, this is the highest or the most dangerous national security threat we have right now is domestic terror. This fits the profile of a domestic terror incident, what happened in Boulder. And to some degree, I know there's some debate over that. It's another conversation of what happened in Atlanta. But our voters, our folks who are tuned into the gun control debate, are they also tuned in or intersecting it or connecting it with domestic terror? Do they have concerns about that?
It's a hard question to answer. It's evolving. People don't have a full understanding of that. And usually what ends up happening is there tends to be kind of a perceived association of, if you're saying that that is domestic terrorism, are you lumping all gun owners in with that person who did a very thing? That's always the visceral concern. Are you talking about me? I would never do that. That's not me. That's not the 99.99% of people who own guns. Right. And when I say me, I'm talking about gun owners. It's not Justin Wallen's perspective. I'm speaking what other people think.
Right. No, that's why I wanted to get that from you to see, what are people thinking, particularly on that side of the political equation, because I think that's important to kind of see, okay, well, where are they coming from, and why do they feel this way, and because that's a very significant portion of the population, particularly the voting population, that is, preventing the passage of, putting pressure on lawmakers to pass gun control laws or to pass the types of laws that we think would be effective to prevent these kinds of calamities. But go ahead. I'm sorry, Justin. Go ahead.
Yeah, well, I mean, that's it. I think there's right now there's a challenge, and there's a lot of rhetoric around it. It's very, very charged because, of course, the issue of slaughtering people who are innocent, right, just buying groceries or working or whatever it might be, should be charged. That generates high emotions. But unfortunately, when we start talking about this stuff in terms of politically, that also translates into charged language, and it tends to create these visceral concerns from gun owners of, am I being lumped into that group? Am I being judged as being unstable and a threat and all these sorts of things? And I'm not. And that creates a tremendous amount of concern about fairness, which of course is highly emotional. I mean, fairness is very, very powerful. And then there's the concern about rights. And when you go back to that understanding that Republicans hold that this is a core right that is guaranteed by the Constitution, that guarantees freedom, if you were to engage in a gun control argument with Republicans, you need to understand that and communicate with them with that in mind so those protections are not lost. And I think that's one of the challenges that a lot of the proponents of gun control are failing to understand. It's very easy to say, I see something and it's clear that it's right, and once I just say it loud enough, the world will agree with me. But you know as well as I know that that's not the way people think. They just don't. And I don't think that there's been an effective enough education and reach out and communication with Republican voters about what parts of gun reform or gun control fit within that view that they have. And maybe they don't, but that's the challenge. Is there's a disconnect in understanding of what gun control means and how it's going to affect Republican voters and gun owners particularly. I don't think that has been adequately addressed.
Do we know where those voters, those types of voters, stood back when I don't in the mid '90s when an assault weapons ban was passed? So it seemed like that was fine back then, and then we had it for about 10 years. We had literally a federal assault weapons ban. We had a ban on guns like the AR-15. And it was actually it was somewhat successful. Like it actually, there was a precipitous drop. It was about a 30+% drop in the number of mass shootings during that period of 10 years from 1994 to 2004. Well, how were voters thinking back then, or how were Republican voters thinking back then? Because it didn't seem like they had a problem with passing. But see, that was at a time when there was like mass open violence in America's cities. We had the drug war going on. Yeah. And so I don't know. I have to say, Justin, like those are the moments where I see suddenly those voters seem a little bit comfortable with doing something like gun control or assault weapons ban when they feel like it's another demographic group. I mean, we see like places like LA, you know, see like, oh, well, you know, we see black people arming up and running around with assault rifles in places like LA or Philly or elsewhere, violence going up. I'm starting to see that again. And so when it's suddenly it's a tough on crime approach that's desired, oh, okay, now I'm comfortable with doing an assault weapons ban. Did we see that? I don't know if you have any background on that, but I'd be real curious to see how did those voters feel back in '94 when they passed that last assault weapons ban?
You know, you raise a very interesting question. It's one that I haven't thought about before. It's a thoughtful question that deserves a thoughtful answer. I don't know. I haven't. I don't know if that data exists from political opinion perspective, from public opinion perspective. I know people ask those questions. They certainly should have. It's a fantastic question. My takeaway on that, my visceral takeaway, until you kind of explained it a little bit more, was, all right, well, if that happened, then my argument or my statement earlier is that there is a path to gun control. I certainly would hope that it doesn't go down
doesn't go down that path, yeah.
I hope it's
and I'm wondering if it's going to go down that path again. You know, like because we are seeing like where you are in Southern California, well, not where you're in Orange County, but LA is seeing spikes in violence that they haven't seen since the '90s. And so I'm like, okay, in Philly we're seeing big spikes in violence. Atlanta, Chicago, and elsewhere, all the major cities are seeing spikes in violence. Obviously, pandemic is a big stressor of that, but I kind of saw signs of it before pandemic. And so I'm wondering, okay, is that what's are we starting to see the ramp up or the lead up to revisiting an assault weapons ban? That's where suddenly even Republican voters, Second Amendment proponents, suddenly they become big advocates of, or they're like, yeah, you know what, we do need an assault weapons ban.
With the caveat that I can't speak towards the question of is it driven by racism. It's a worthwhile question that deserves to be answered.
Look at California. Like, I mean, when Ronald Reagan was governor at the time, and then the Black Panthers were a big issue in California back in the late '60s, early '70s. That was suddenly, it's like, oh, we've got to do something about that. We've got to limit access to firearms. And so it's fascinating. I do want to unpack that a little bit more. I don't want to put you on the spot because I know you don't have that kind of data from how people were feeling in the '90s or how they were feeling back then. But I do want to follow up on that at some later point.
Yeah, and I mean, there was a lot of visible stuff too. I mean, you remember there were, a couple Eastern Bloc gentlemen who very visibly took over a bank with AKs that were converted to hold barrel drums, and I mean, there was a lot of hyper violence kind of going along at that time. I do know that achieved momentum because of feeling that people were under threat. So I can speak to that. That's certainly there. And as you say, I just don't have the data in terms of was that driven by a visceral racist or even slightly racist tinge. I just don't know, so I can't speak to it. But when people feel under threat, they start to change their worldview, right? The facts are the same until the facts change. And certainly that could be a catalyst for a greater appetite for this, but I'm not seeing it yet. Our memories are so quick to fade, Charles. We see something.
That's the thing, yeah. No, you're absolutely right. I did want to transition to, well, I got you for just a couple more minutes, Justin, and always good to talk with you, on the issue of voting rights, how that conversation intersects with still lots of voters out there, lots of Republican voters in particular, still out there feeling like 2020 was an illegitimate election. So, you know, there's this voting rights versus election reform debate that's happening. Where do Republican voters stand on voting rights? Because voting rights, I think, it's for everyone. You know, everyone would want like easy access to the polls or to make sure that they vote. And so I just wonder, I mean, I don't see that polling data as crisp, as clear. I know how progressives and Democrats and even black communities feel about voting rights. We obviously are very passionate about that. How do Republican voters feel about specifically voting rights, having more access to the right to vote?
Yeah, and I'll just say you are right, and you've seen the polling data, and it's accurate that a very large proportion of Republicans do not view the election as being valid, in spite of evidence, including election inspectors, to the contrary. So it's a very interesting dynamic there. It's deeply troubling, but when you start talking about voting rights, there's a stark divide. Republicans are interested, and I have delved into this a bit, with one thing and one thing only, that you are who you say you are when you vote. Mm-hmm. So it really just boils down to some kind of identification. And I don't know if that's, you know, when you're born in the U.S., you are immediately registered to vote, like you know, Social Security card or something along those. I don't know what that solution is, but that's what it is. Conversely, what we find in disadvantaged communities, they say, well, all right, a license sounds like it's easy, but it may not be that easy for folks who are disadvantaged, whether it's rural or urban. There are all hosts sort of things that can get in the way. It can be from working 3 jobs and you just can't go down to the DMV, right? It can be from all distance, all sorts of things. I say to that if that is the issue, and everyone agrees that you should, and it seems that they largely do, that you should be able to prove who you are as a citizen to vote, then it doesn't matter if it's early or by mail or whatnot. And if people have a problem getting identification, then it is the role of the government to close that gap and ensure that our citizens, including those in disadvantaged communities, have that ability to vote no matter what, because it is critical.
Yeah, no, it absolutely is critical. And I definitely, that's another conversation. I know we got to let you go, man. We ran out of time, but I definitely want to explore that more, unpack it more, and I'll prepare you a little bit more. Because I am very curious, going back to that gun control issue and the issue of an assault weapons ban, what that looked like previously, right?
Yeah.
So I'm giving you a little
take a look.
I'm giving you a little homework. That's what I'm doing. You know, find out like what was that? How were people feeling back then, especially Republican voters back in when they passed the '94 crime bill, inserted the assault weapons ban. Everybody they were fine with it for 10 years, and obviously Republicans took control of Congress and they it expired and they let it go. But I'd be real curious to see that. And '94 was at a time when, when that was being passed, you had like the Cambridge Revolution starting up, and Republicans were obviously they ended up taking over Congress. But it'll be real interesting to get that, and also kind of looking at the history of gun control. I'm going to look at that. I'm kind of giving some homework to myself too, but I want to have that discussion because I think it might help start unpacking and figuring out, okay, well, what's the pathway to ultimately eliminating this kind of violence? And is it gun control? Is it domestic terror response? What is it exactly, and how do we get voters on board? Justin Wallen of J. Wallen Research. Go to jwallen.com, at JustinWallen1 on social media. He's highly engaged. We bring him on every now and then here on our strategist segment. He's a regular contributor here at WURD's Reality Check. Thanks again, Justin.
Thanks so much for having me. I've got my marching.
Right.
I'm off.
Okay, excellent. All right, thank you. Appreciate it. Take care.
You too.
All right, let's take a break, and when we come back, we'll just open up phone lines. I know we had a couple of callers, folks who want to call in and chime in on the discussion. Also have some breaking news coming out of Colorado, including the identification of the shooter. So that should be interesting, because it's kind of interesting, like who that shooter is. We haven't had much information on that mass shooter, that domestic terror incident out there in Boulder, Colorado. But we'll find out. There's some breaking news about that after we take this quick break.
March is Colorectal Cancer Awareness Month. Colon cancer is preventable. Screenings help to find growths, or polyps, inside the colon. Almost every colorectal cancer begins as a small, non-cancerous polyp. African American screening age is now 45 years old. Catch it early. For more information, go to getscreened.org. That's getscreened.org. Plus, stay tuned for more information on our up-and-coming Go to Know campaign for the WURD listening audience.
Family Therapy Vignette Moments with Dr. Lucille Ijoy. Come on out and become a WURD Radio member one by one. Renew your membership or get a new one. Get serious information and have some fun. Call 215-425-7875. That's 215-425-7875. Come on out and become a WURD Radio member one by one. Renew your membership or get a new one. Get serious information and have some fun.
Need to replace your Social Security card? In most states, you can request one online with a My Social Security account. A My Social Security account gives you secure access to your personal earnings history and benefit status. You can also get a proof of income letter, estimate and apply for benefits, and more. Save time. Go online. Open a My Social Security account at ssa.gov/myaccount. Social Security. Securing today and tomorrow.
Produced at U.S. taxpayer expense.
Reality Check with Charles Ellison right now on WURD Radio and WURDradio.com.
Real quick, MSNBC is identifying the Boulder, Colorado mass shooter, domestic terrorist as 21-year-old Ahmad al-Aliwi Alisa. So I know we're going to be having a conversation as far as I don't have a photograph of who that person is, but I know we'll be having a conversation. We're getting more information about the suspect. So it's going to change the contours. It is dramatically of this conversation we are having. It still is a domestic terror incident in my mind. It fits the profile of that. And but we are going to be having, the country is going to be having a different conversation once they get more information about the suspect. The suspect is being described, he is in custody. He was shot in the leg. The bullet went through the leg, and the suspect is described as a resident of Arvada, Colorado. I think that's a suburb of Boulder, Colorado, and is described as having lived, quote, lived most of his life in the United States. That's what the Boulder County District Attorney is saying. So he is being charged with first-degree murder. He's facing 10 counts of murder in the first degree, obviously because of 10 people dying, ranging in age from 20 to 65. So that's the latest that we have on that. Let me go to the phone lines. Tyrone out of North Philly has been waiting patiently for a reality check. Tyrone?
Well, peace and blessings, good brother.
Hey, peace. How are you doing, Tyrone?
I am good, Brother Charles. How are you, my good brother?
All right.
Well, look, before I get to my comment on the violence, I really wanted to make a quick comment about zoning. You know, just like voting, zoning is a process that you just got to participate in. Now, right. I understand that there's a lot of dynamics, and, you know, racism it does play a role in anything and everything that happens in this country, so I ain't going to, downplay that. But you do have an opportunity at those zoning boards to go and deal with, things that are coming in your neighborhood. That's why before anybody can do anything, they put those on signs up and saying, look, we are getting ready to put this establishment here.
Right.
And it's just going to take a little, time and effort to go down there because, been down there on several occasions, and it's a process, and folks just got to be a part of the process, particularly if it's going to impact, your community and your lifestyle there. So I just wanted to say that very quickly. But Charles, every time we talk about violence, I just think about the conversation that you and Brother Vince, we had down at Bartram Village. Bartram Garden. Because I'm always say that, we got to be protectors of our own community. And I kind of, understand what Brother Maurice is always saying, that, everything seems to be designed in such a way that it's pretty much harmful to us. If you look at, again, everything that has happened with these last shootings, and like Solomon keeps saying, how in the world a 12-year-old can get shot in a store because folks feel that he's threatening, and here when you got an actual, gun situation, nobody ever seemed to get, to get killed. Other than the person that's killing somebody. So there's something drastically wrong with every time we're confronted with that we got, no guns, no nothing, and hands up, and we still the possibility.
It's a fair conversation to exactly. Like these folks who are involved in these domestic terror incidents are just constantly coming out alive. But that is a conversation we need to have, and it needs to be directed at law enforcement agencies at the time while we're having a conversation about reimagining or overhauling policing in the U.S. We need to be point blank about, and I suspect some people are not having it nationally, Brother Tyrone, because they feel like it's an awkward conversation, it's disrespectful. Hey, this just happened. We don't want to disrespect these people that just died in this incident. I don't think so. I think it's a more than appropriate conversation. I think, that, and I think it actually honors the memory of folks who died, because it's once again, it's there has to be, that question there's a few questions that come up. That question of, disparate treatment, between us who are unarmed in many situations with police and actual violent, lunatic, mass shooting domestic terrorists. There's a difference in how state and local law enforcement treat them.
So Charles, let me end with this. Just like you have your strategy session with, the brother that just went off, we in our community is really got to put some think tank strategy sessions, because we are so combated with so many things that we really need to sit down, and I appreciate, Brother Solomon's and men and the Black Male Community Council, these boards are really trying, but we got to do that on a massive level, because it's one thing that we got to deal with all of the external issues, but boy, when we got our children, killing, one another, shooting up the community, disrupting, then we are at another level, Charles, and we really, really got to put our heads and minds and things together, because as you had mentioned earlier about, the terrorist stuff, that, you got agencies to deal with that. Well, we got agencies that supposed to be dealing with the stuff that we're dealing with, but apparently, it's not working. So we really got to figure out what's going to work with us, man, and get our young folks to understand that they are part of the solution and shouldn't be the problem.
That's true. Brother Tom, I got to let you go, but thank you for that, too. On zoning, I think you're absolutely right. There has to be a more coordinated, and much more thoughtful community-wide action plan on zoning issues, especially in cities like Philadelphia. We don't have that right now. That's not happening. this vast ecosystem of all these different community advocacy organizations in a city like Philadelphia, and no one's thought to rally residents, especially black residents, around the issue of zoning. No one's thought to do that. But when the zoning, when the bills are introduced, you know, you get a councilman like Councilman Kenyatta Johnson, bills introduced, it's already too late, it's about to get passed, then everybody gets this flares up and fires up to find out about it. Like, y'all have not come up with a program or a system yet, like Brother Tyrone was saying, you know, to go into these hearings, to find out about them, to keep track of them. All the variety of all these different advocacy groups and community-based organizations have not come up with that strategy yet. So maybe y'all need to get to work on that. Let me go to William out of Mount Airy, who's calling in for a reality check. William?
Hi, good day.
Good day, how are you?
A couple issues I want to talk on. We're speaking about the gun and the violence. First of all, the violence is deplorable no matter where it's at, whether it's Philadelphia or Boulder, Colorado, anywhere.
Yeah.
I'm also concerned, though, about whose agenda is being addressed when we use terms like domestic terrorists, and we take that upon ourselves and our families mind that now we have to deal with domestic terrorism. I believe those are just some code words that are being thrown about by the powers that control those things. Another issue you talked about was black people and guns and white people and guns. I think it would be unwise of any race that is subject to the abuse and the behavior and treatment that we are as black to disarm themselves, to not have a means of protection besides martial arts and whatever close.
So let me ask you, William, I mean, but two questions come up. Oh, but go ahead, finish.
Go ahead. I'm glad you.
Yeah, but I mean, two questions come up. So you don't think that there is a domestic terror problem, that there is a white nationalist-driven domestic terror problem that's afflicting the United States right now? You don't think that that's happening? So that's the first question.
I absolutely think that those things are happening, but I don't think that they are necessarily concerns of the black community. I believe that we are always.
But you know, that term wasn't just it's not a current term. It's not a contemporary term. It actually was used during Reconstruction back in the late 19th century. Domestic terror. Look it up.
Well,
I mean, there was an actual federal law passed to battle and defeat and eliminate the Ku Klux Klan, who they were classified and designated as domestic. You don't think that was a domestic terror threat back then?
What I'm saying is.
Or do you think that they were using code words back then?
What I'm saying is the usage of the words at particular times in history and at the present time in history is for a purpose of someone else's agenda besides the black community. The black community is, in my thought, is always having their agenda picked for them by outside sources. You know, you just were mentioning that nobody got on the bandwagon until Brother Kenyatta did what he did, and then everybody wanted to jump in. So that right there is evidence that we don't drive our own bus most of the time. Someone else does. And they pick the agenda for us, and we follow along with the code words like domestic terrorism and, you know, all the other code words that you hear regularly in the news. And I know it's hard not.
I don't think it's a code word. I think it's an appropriate way. It's a correct way to classify a threat. And just generally speaking, I mean, in the English language, you need, well, any language, if you're trying to identify certain issues and challenges and threats, you need words, you need phrases. I don't know what else to call it. If we don't call it domestic terrorism, what else do we call it?
If my young boy down the block is in a dispute with his other counterparts, and they're fighting over a girl or they're shooting at each other over a drug war, I can't domestically make them a terrorist group.
No, I that's not what I'm saying. I understand what you're saying. I do understand what you're saying with that, William. No, I wouldn't classify. Those are crime. I think you have two.
Okay, but now.
But that's no. Wait a second. Because wait. I think you have you got your basic public safety issues and crime, like just regular crime that happens in any major community or major city. Yeah, that's crime. But you do know when it is elevated to a point of terror, where it's something that's coordinated. It's also based off of, political or social ideologies, and you're acting out on that, and then you mass shoot, then you arm up and you mass shoot a bunch of people. There are specific definitions. Let's not mix apples and oranges here. There are specific definitions to one. Yeah, there is a space for regular crimes, regular average violent crimes that police, public safety institutions have to respond to. But then there's domestic terror. That's in a category in and of itself, all by itself, and there are specific definitions for that.
I'm sure there are. My point is,
I just don't think it's a code word.
We don't we don't need to bundle as a community, because I believe that this radio station speaks to the black community. That's why I called. So we should not bundle our stuff with that other stuff, because these problems
that affects us too.
Are basically domestic home problems where there was no father, or the mother's on the street, or there's just no cooperation. Those are local family issues, even in Chicago, even in LA. These are children who have been indoctrinated into a behavior.
Which is, William, I gotta let you go, which is going to be funny, right? Because, you're saying that these are localized domestic issues and that we shouldn't lump ourselves into other people's agendas. But it's going to be real interesting. It's going to be fascinating to get your view on things when suddenly it does these things that are affecting us, or localized issues or localized crime, suddenly it becomes elevated to a national issue, and then they pass a law that's going to disproportionately or negatively impact us. Then I'll be real curious to see what your thoughts or what your view will be on it by then. I'll be curious.
Ignore these issues. I'm not saying to ignore them. What I'm saying is we should not bundle us with that.
It's not about bundling. It's basically it's about preempting them. It's about us being proactive and preempting them where they escalate into even worse, because we see that they're escalating. And so what do we do? What do we do to take? Because you're saying that we're not. Because at one point you were saying we're not being proactive enough on these issues. I'm having some trouble kind of understanding what you're saying exactly on that. You and I are just going to have to fundamentally disagree on the use of domestic terrorism as a code word. I don't think it's a code word. It wasn't a code word back then when domestic terror was killing lots of black people post-Civil War. And the federal government at that time, including white progressive radicals, were like, we need to figure out a solution. We need to figure out a decisive response to this kind of activity. And they did. They legislated it. They did. And it worked for a very short period of time. It literally drove the Ku Klux Klan underground. So, I mean, we need those kinds of decisive responses these days. I think that's my opinion, it's not like it wasn't up before.
And whose agenda is satisfied by that usage?
I would think that's our agenda too, because I don't want to see bubbling up domestic terrorism or ideological violence that's killing us. It was killing us back then. I don't want to see it ended up killing us now. I mean, that's our agenda. That's not our agenda to utilize governing institutions and place pressure on elected officials to reduce harm against us.
I'm going to leave you with my last thought, and that is the man that was elected president was the last white man I heard say, they're going to put y'all back in chains. Have a good day, bro. Thank you.
All right. Thanks, brother. All right. Okay. Let's take a break. Yeah, we got to take a break. When we come back on the other side, we'll talk about voting rights. We have our voting rights threat assessment coming up next with All Voting is Local here on Reality Check 96.1 FM 900 AM, WURDradio.com, WURD TV, WURD app. Stay tuned. And we'll be right back.
Did you know you can use LIHEAP to pay your PICO bill? Last year, PICO customers received almost $17 million in free LIHEAP support. This year, take advantage. This deal is first come, first served. Apply now. Call 800-34-HELP-4.
WURD Radio Digital Tip of the Week with Stephanie Humphrey.
I'm your Tech Life expert, Stephanie Humphrey, and this is your WURD Digital Tip of the Week. With over 750 million users, LinkedIn is the world's largest professional social network. Whether you're looking for a job, trying to find paying customers for your business, or just looking to expand your network, LinkedIn is the place to do it. Here are a few tips to make the most of the platform. It might sound simple, but make sure your profile has a picture. You'll get 20 times more engagement than if you leave it out. Try to include keywords relevant to your industry in your profile info, and make sure you customize your connection requests before you send them. Get more career tips right here on WURD and stay connected with us at WURDradio.com.
The WURD Digital Tip of the Week is brought to you by Comcast NBC Universal.
Enterprise Exterminators, located 4943 Wayne Avenue, specializing in lanternflies, termites, bedbugs, fleas, mice, and roaches. Do-it-yourself kits are available. Call now, 215-849-7070.
The WURD Radio Newsletter, keeping you informed, engaged, and connected. Sign up by visiting WURDradio.com. Scroll to the bottom of the page and type your email address under Connect with Us. You'll receive the latest information on WURD Radio, messages from our president and CEO, Sarah Lomax-Reese, exclusive articles and multimedia content, and resources. Stay informed with the WURD Radio Newsletter. Lifting every voice till earth and heaven ring. This is WURD Radio, 96.1 FM and 900 AM WURD Philadelphia. Black Talk Media. Reality Check with Charles Ellison right now on WURD Radio and WURDradio.com.
Welcome back. We're now headed into a voting rights threat assessment, looking at the nationwide attack on voting rights. Still have 250 plus bills, pieces of legislation being introduced in 43 different states, Pennsylvania among them, to destroy our right to vote. That's been ongoing. That threat has been elevated. Speaking of threats, I know we're talking about a whole wide array and host of threats this Tuesday edition of Reality Check. Voting rights is a threat. We've been the attack, the all-out attack that's happening state and federal level to voting rights is in full earnest. And we've been highlighting that, showcasing that, particularly with our partners. All Voting is Local. We partnered up with them last year during the 2020 elections to highlight issues and challenges and navigating people through mail balloting, and also ensuring that people were fully maximizing their right to vote last year, 2020. We had some success with that, I'm told. So now there's no sleep this year, 2021, because there has been a huge escalation in the fight for voting rights. And so All Voting is Local. I've been teaming up with them and bringing them on each week, different folks from different states to talk about the challenges that they're dealing with in this attack on voting rights. I've got Arian Abney, who is Director of Special Projects for Pennsylvania's All Voting is Local. Go to allvotingislocal.org. Arian joins us by Skype, so you can watch him on WURD TV. Arian, good to see you again.
Always a pleasure, Charles. Thanks for having me.
All right. Thanks for being here. Really appreciate it. So before we get, I do want to ask you some questions about what's happening in Pennsylvania, particularly in counties Allegheny, Erie, and Philadelphia County, as we've got the May 18th election, the primaries that are coming up. But before I do, just want to kind of get an update, a status report on how things are shaking out in the Pennsylvania legislature with respect to what are called voter suppression. I'm calling them voter destruction bills. We got about 14 bills sneaking their way through the Pennsylvania state legislature, all looking at restricting voter access. What's the latest update on those laws or those proposed laws right now?
Yeah, so what we know as of this past week, the House State Government Committee has been hosting several hearings over the past several weeks, really in response to what happened in the 2020 election, to get a better sense of kind of what went right, what didn't go right, and what they think they can, implement in terms of some changes. And so what we've been told is that there aren't any plans as of today to move any bills forward until all of those hearings are complete. And it's my understanding that they have a few more hearings over the next couple of weeks to go. So that's some sort of positive news that they aren't going to be moving on any legislation, so they say right now, but things can always change at a matter of a drop of a hat. So one of the positive things that we know we do have, despite the way that the legislature is currently set up, is that we have a pro-voting governor who has already made it publicly known that if any sort of anti-voter bills or any repeals to Act 77 get pushed through the legislature while he's in office, he's going to do everything he can to make sure that he repeals them. So that's good for the immediate future, but we're looking at this sort of long term. We know that those who are pushing back on access to the ballot in the legislature, that they are sort of making preparations for maybe introducing bills, maybe not immediately, but maybe in the next session or in a session going forward. They're trying to do a litmus test to see what they can get away with, not just right now, but also in the future. So we got to keep paying attention.
Yeah, that's what I think they're doing too. Do you think that because, I mean, we've had extra awareness around this issue? Because I think for a while it was kind of, for a moment there, it was sort of floating under the radar. I really do believe that. I think that, you know, people weren't aware on a statewide scale. People weren't aware on a national scale that, hey, there was this huge mountain, this piling up mountain of these voter suppression bills happening in all these state capitals. We've thrown a spotlight on it, you know, particularly through programs like this, through constant conversations like this. So it sounds like, you know, they're sort of hesitating now to kind of slowing it down or slowing the pace of how they're passing these bills. One, because of that, and two, obviously the governor. And that was good for the governor, for Governor Tom Wolf. Those conversations happening more out in the open, because if he was kind of relaxing on this or sleeping on it or wasn't aware, now he is. He's like, oh, yeah, okay, yeah, we're not going to pass these bills. So I think that you suspect that this huge kind of this burgeoning public awareness campaign that's happening in multiple states is starting to have something of an effect. It's at least putting certain legislatures on the spot.
Absolutely. They know that people are watching. They know that they knew that people were watching in 2020, and going into 2021, they're still feeling the effects of being under the microscope. And, you know, for a lot of them, you know, a lot of organizations in the voting rights space, when bad bills get discussed or talked about, they set up their own campaigns and they activate folks in counties where those legislators are to call the legislator and say, hey, we don't support that bill. We hope that we don't push it forward. So they know that folks are watching. But this year, 2021, 2021 is really going to be a really important year when it comes to voting rights and legislation that gets passed, because this is usually the year when, before like a gubernatorial race next year, the year before that is really when they start to decide what laws that they want to try to pass or get pushed forward and kind of test those limits. And so this is a really critical year. We can't sort of rest on our laurels of 2020, and we have to be vigilant in 2021, because if there's any time for them to kind of sneak things through or push things forward, it would be this year, because next year they're all up for re-election. Right. And so when they're up for re-election, they tend to not do anything too controversial, because they know that their voters are going to be paying probably more attention to those type of things.
Paying close attention. Yeah, no, I totally agree with you. What are the, you know, real quick too, you know, as we're still getting sort of an update on what's happening in Pennsylvania, what are those bills or those proposals that are the most alarming to you? What are the ones that we really need to pay attention to or people need to be aware of at this point?
Well, they're all alarming.
All alarming,
and they're all alarming. They're all designed to make it just harder for people to be able to vote. Anything from more restrictive voter ID laws, which, you know, back in 2012, 2013, that was a major issue in Pennsylvania. There's conversations about bringing that back up. There's conversations about repealing back counties' ability to do drop boxes, and counties' ability to do what some call satellite offices or early voting, which all were phenomenal reforms that were implemented before the pandemic, But because of the pandemic, it just made them that much more critical because people were able to to vote early. They were able to, cast a ballot in the safety of their home, which during a pandemic is probably the most, from a health perspective, the most ideal way to actually cast your ballot. And so what we're trying to push counties to do now, because they still have the opportunity to do these reforms, but counties have the real decision on implementation, whether they want to do it or they don't want to do it. And one thing, when you meet one county board of elections, I tell people you met one county board of elections. Every county is not going to run their election the same exact way to the same exact level. And so we're trying to really encourage these county elections officials to make decisions, because voters have expectations now, right? They were able to vote by mail last year. They were able to use drop boxes. They were able to vote early. That we don't want county elections officials to start to peel those things back and confuse voters about what they should expect in this upcoming May 18th election. One, because it causes confusion for voters when they think they've done something last time and then this time it's not available to them. But also it gives fodder for those in the legislature who don't want to see these happening, these things like vote by mail or satellite offices or drop boxes. It gives them some justification to say, hey, see, counties aren't doing these things. They're not using it. So why should we implement laws to allow this to happen? Because nobody's using it anyway. So we are encouraging counties take full advantage of these opportunities right now, show the legislature that voters want to have all of these reforms still in place so that they can't push them back.
Yeah, no, that's good. And it's interesting. I had a guest on here who was, I think it was last week, who was reflecting on a state like Utah. Mm-hmm. And Utah, long time reliably red state. Demographically, obviously, Utah, not a whole lot of diversity going on there. And they have like universal mail balloting. They're not complaining. And that's a reliably red Republican state. They're not complaining. So, like, why are, conservatives, Republicans in other states complaining about things like, hey, well, look at your very reliably longtime red state, your partner, and they've been doing it. Why don't you ask them? And they haven't been having those issues as far as security or fraud or some of the things that proponents or critics of universal mail balloting and universal access have been saying.
Yeah, well, it's the unfortunate reality is that sometimes when things don't go the way that you expect, you try to change the rules. Yeah. Right. And that's when you have the leverage and the numbers and the powers to kind of do that. That's what happened. And two, I think, in some of these other states that have, vote by mail and instituted it, they've been doing it for years and for decades now. Because we're so in the infancy stage of doing this, there are some folks who were saying, let's try to nip it in the bud or stop it now before it really sort of catches on. And we're 10 years down the line, and then it's going to be, almost impossible to pull it back. Yeah. And so that's, for us in Pennsylvania, that's why we're trying to push county elections officials, like, let's keep it going. Let's justify it. And it's going to take some time to ramp up to get people to really fully commit to it as far as voters and to believe in it. But you can look at some of these states like Utah and Colorado and other states. It took them,
Oregon,
Washington, it took them some time, but they are in a space where we can learn some lessons on how to do it correctly.
Yeah. Talking with Arian Abney, who is Director of Special Projects for All Voting's Local Pennsylvania. He's joining us now via Skype here on Reality Check WURD for our voting rights threat assessment, #voting rights threat report. Arian, let me ask you about Allegheny, Erie, Philadelphia counties. Due to budget constraints, they're saying that there are no plans for early voting sites and drop boxes. What's going on there? Like, because we were fine with it last year, but now suddenly they don't want to do it.
Yeah, so that's a lot of what we're hearing is that, there are concerns around the funding for these operations. But our response to that is elections happen every year, right?
Right.
This is not something that is just coming out of the blue. This is something that we should be planning for. Each and every year there are elections, and, budgets are statements of priority. And we are really encouraging folks in all of the three of these counties and all of our counties across the Commonwealth that they should be funding our elections. They should be putting money towards expanding access to the ballot for a lot of voters. And, they should be doing it in a very transparent way. Allegheny County, for example, they have yet to have a public election board meeting this year. and we have an election that is, less than 2 months away, and that's election day. That's not to mention that, ballots are going to start going out in the next 2 weeks or so. So people are going to be voting early. And for them, for voters not to know sort of what the expectations are in the next 2 weeks is very concerning. So Allegheny County has their scheduled board meeting May the 4th, which is 2 weeks before the election day. We know by then most of the folks who were planning to vote by mail will have already cast a ballot. And we know that 2 weeks before the election, is not enough time for people to understand the decisions that are being made, because we know that decisions are being made right now behind the scenes. We want those behind the scenes decisions to be made public. And we are working with some groups on the ground in Allegheny County to pen a letter to the Board of Elections, really urging them to have a public Board of Elections meeting within the next 2 weeks so that voters know what to expect, and voting rights advocacy groups have enough proper information to educate voters on what they should expect, and not have to wait until 2 weeks before the election to know what the plans are going to be.
Yeah. Well, the other thing too about funding, have we identified federal dollars that are being distributed or dispersed to states right now to help them, fill some of those budget holes, monies that have been received through either the federal government or from foundations going towards issues like election security or voter access enhancement? I'm trying to wrap my head around. I just remember last year, the city of Philadelphia, the county of Philadelphia, receiving dollars to help with some of those budget constraints. What happened to that money?
Yeah, so a lot of those grants and dollars that were coming in were one-time grants and dollars, and there are ongoing operational costs for elections, right? So a lot of times right before the election, counties will staff up. They'll hire more folks, and so they need the funds to do that. And if you're doing satellite offices, you need to have the funding to run the satellite office in different locations and the technology to communicate from the satellite office to the main office. So there are incurred costs with that, and there are foundation and other grant opportunities that are available if the counties want to sort of take advantage of it. And so we are really trying to, both push at the federal level for more funding for elections, and at the local level, try to work with our county elections officials to develop more creative ways to develop budgets to fund the elections coming up.
Got it. Do you feel like, or is there any conversation, Arian, that you feel like, okay, well, there's not a whole lot of focus or emphasis on May 18th on the primaries? Because, that's typically, you see a lot of low voter response or low voter activity during those primaries anyway, or during those what we call off season. So, are you feeling like that's also another reason behind this, that county officials just feel like, okay, they can take a vacation here, we're in the off season?
I hope that's not how they feel.
I hope that's not how they feel either, but I wonder.
I can't speak directly for them. I think actions speak louder than words, and so the fact that many counties, many voters in many counties across Commonwealth haven't heard from their county elections officials about what the actual plan is and what the election is going to look like coming up. I think there is this sentiment and this feeling that there's a little bit of a nonchalant kind of attitude or cavalier approach, sort of resting on our laurels from 2020. And so, we know that they responded to the public pressure of 2020, and there was a lot of eyes on them. And so organizations like ours, All Voting is Local, and others that we partner with are here to remind them that people are still watching, people are still looking, and we know that you respond to pressure, and so we're going to continue to put the pressure on you. And the reality of the fact is, this upcoming primary election, in comparison to other primary elections that are in odd years, the potential for the turnout to be higher. One, again, because many people will be planning to vote by mail, but also this is a primary election where independents actually have an opportunity to cast a ballot because of the ballot questions that are going to be on there that traditionally in primaries, people who are not registered as a Republican or Democrat, but are registered as independents, typically aren't able to vote in primaries unless there is a ballot initiative. And so that's going to increase the amount of people who are actually going to turn out this upcoming election. So it's really critical that county elections officials, they have a plan and they execute it and they let people know what that plan is.
Well, We've been talking with Arian Abney. He is Director of Special Projects at All Voting is Local, Pennsylvania. Go to allvotingislocal.org. He is at AAA2 on social media, on Twitter, if you'd like to reach him there or see what he's up to. Voting is Local on social media as well for All Voting is Local and the good work that they're doing in multiple states, Pennsylvania included. It's good to talk with Abney again, Arian again, excuse me, and hopefully we'll have you back in the future. Thanks so much, man. Thanks for this work.
Thanks, Charles. Always a pleasure. Take care.
All right. Take care, man. Be safe. All right. Let's take a break. As far as I know, we are going to have open phone lines from now until the 1 o'clock hour, till we close shop on this Tuesday edition. 215-634-8065, 866-361-0900 here on Reality Check. 215-634-8065, toll free 866-361-0900 here on Reality Check. Let's take a break, and we'll be right back with open phone lines.
Just one more step. You got it.
You're doing great. This is the sound of a nationally ranked top rehabilitation hospital, home to the largest collection of robotics in the United States, where we continually exceed patient expectations, because no injury is too severe or too minor for our care.
There you go.
This is the sound of success. Moss Rehab. Challenge accepted.
Okay, Her's new fire potato chips and cheese curls, they are spicy. Whew, they're hottest snacks yet. Hold on. Whew. But you know, it's not just heat. There's some nice sweet and savory stuff going on too. Ooh, there's that heat again. It burns, but it burns so tasty. Ooh, that's hot. Find Her's Fire Snacks at your store today. Whew. Taste the flavor, feel the heat, break out the Her's.
If you understand the value of doing business with a company that values its clients, remember this name, Heat and Air Guys. At Heat and Air Guys, we give our clients extra value by offering lots of ways to make their lives easier, like financing for your installation. You get 18 months, no interest, no payments, 10-year parts and labor warranties, service on all makes and models, seasonal tune-ups, all offered by skilled, reliable technicians who value the opportunity to be of service to you. Call Heat and Air Guys at 610-583-3207.
The Black Words Book Club. WURD Radio's new monthly conversation on books that explore the African American experience through social, economic, and environmental justice issues. Tune in the second Tuesday of every month on Evening Words with Nick Taliaferro, 4 p.m. till 7 p.m. For April, WURD Radio is partnering with the Free Library of Philadelphia and showcasing their pick for its annual citywide reading program, One Book, One Philadelphia, entitled The Tradition by Jericho Brown. Be sure to listen live, as Nick Taliaferro will hold a contest for a giveaway book bundle that consists of 4 titles from Kensington's Defina's Authors of Color's newest release. Don't miss it. Tuesday, April 13th on Evening Words with Nick Taliaferro. Attention for WURD members. Get your copy and receive a 20% discount when you purchase at Harriet's Bookstore or Hakeem's Bookstore. For more information on the Black Words Book Club, visit wordradio.com. The Black Words Book Club is sponsored by Defina. Defina is an imprint of Kensington Publishing Corporation, America's independent publisher, concentrating on authors of color.
Reality Check with Charles Ellison right now on WURD Radio and WURDRadio.com.
All right. Welcome back. 215-634-8065, toll free 866-361-0900. Phone lines are back open here on Reality Check. 215-634-8065, toll free 866-361-0900. Feel free to call in. Obviously, a lot to talk about. Also, just some news happening in other places around the nation. Boston has got its first black mayor. The city of Boston getting its first black mayor as of yesterday, as of last night. The current mayor, or the outgoing mayor now, Marty Walsh, submitted his resignation so he could become Labor Secretary of Labor for the United States under the Biden administration. And so Kim Janey, who is the Boston City Council president, is filling the void as acting mayor. So Boston getting its first black person and also its first woman to become mayor of Boston. So that's interesting. That's happening up there in Boston. Also, people hearing about the Evanston, Illinois, that's a suburb of Chicago, but the Evanston, Illinois City Council approving by an 8-to-1 vote to approve the first phase of what they're calling a reparations plan. It's a reparations plan for Black residents in the small city of Evanston, Illinois. So there are 75,000 residents in the city of Evanston, Illinois. 16% of those residents are Black. So this, what they're calling a reparations plan, would make $400,000 available in, at least immediately available, in $25,000 home ownership and improvement grants. So $25,000 would go to a household or go to a family or go to an individual, Black individual, who can prove that they are the direct descendants of individuals, of Black individuals who lived in Evanston, Illinois between 1919 and 1969. So that there was some heated and emotional debate that was happening in the Evanston, or what's being described as emotional debate that was happening in the Evanston City Council hearing about that before that final 8-to-1 vote. And some people who were saying that it wasn't really fully a reparations package, like you really can't call it reparations. They didn't feel like it was reparations. They feel like, hey, we need to flesh this out more and see if we can get something a lot more comprehensive. But and that's going to be part, that $400,000 that's available now will be part of a larger $10 million package that's being approved for continued reparations initiatives. So they're going to be rolling out a series of initiatives in Evanston, and that will be funded by income from cannabis taxes over the next decade. So there were about 60 people that spoke before that vote, many who endorsed the resolution, and others who were criticizing it and saying that they needed more time to reshape the plan, that they felt like housing assistance is not a credible form of reparations. So that's what's happening in Evanston, Illinois. Some people might be, having a bit more interest. There's always some interesting things coming out of Evanston, Illinois. For example, I think they were trying that experiment in Evanston, Illinois. I remember saying something. Trying to think what show that was. It was on HBO. But anyway, how like they have the local police department. They have the police. They were piloting a program and having local police live inside those communities that they patrol, actually like live in those houses, and they were actually having some positive results with that. So that's what's coming out of Evanston now. 215-634-8065, toll free 866-361. Phone lines are back open up. 215-634-8065, 866-361-0900. Let me go to George out of Center City. He's calling it for a reality check.
Charles, it's great that you mentioned Evanston, Illinois. It's because you got to realize there is small and they're not into race big, blacks against whites, whites against black. They usually work in cohesion together there. I mean, that's a real decent place, and they keep everything intact. Their schools intact. Everything there is intact. It's like, you'd be like, dang, these people live like this? It's like, they remind you of what was the black mayor up there in Chicago, the first black, not Maynard, but the one after that day, he died with a heart attack. Well, anyway.
Harold Washington in Chicago?
Yeah, Harold Washington. They remind you of his type of thoughts and model there. They're real smooth there. They don't tolerate all that foolishness with, putting blacks against white. It's more interracial there than anywhere in the country. But I didn't even call you for that, Charles. Is that, we have a real big thing here where as though you said that you was going to get the prison people. You know that the person that was head of the prison union there, the prison guards, he lost the election. He lost the election. The business manager, they got all new people there except one, I think the vice president or whatever is contesting that there. But that was the best thing because they listened to URD and heard how the previous administration was in the bed with the administration. That's what they mean. Workers and management never work together. So that all worked out. They got rid of them. Now, if they can get rid of the police commissioner, also, Charles, you never got into the subject of, and we asked you about it, how is it that she had a contract whereas though after 1 year, 365 days, she's invested. That means that the city got to pay her a salary, a pension. After 1 year, no performance, no nothing. Everything she got is a low performance of pay. Everything. You tell me one good thing she has done, and I mean, to deserve to say that she should be police commissioner. I mean, she's underqualified, but she's going to walk away with almost $30,000 a month for the rest of her life when she leaves here. And you think that's right? There's no way humanly possible that's right. Charles, when are you going to have those extortionists on your show, or are you not going to have them on your show? The ones who was going to extort corporate America for $100 million, you know, or whatever they're going to do, pimp them for it, however they think they're going to get it. When you going to have them on here?
Who's that? Who are you talking about?
Them preachers, them black preachers, the black clergy, them pimps.
Okay. But at some point, yeah, because I know they rolled out a new plan, so and I'm aware
of it. What plan, Charles? They still talking about some stuff when Wilson Good was mayor. Tell me one thing the black clergy ever do that money is not involved. They're hustlers. They're pimps.
I don't know. You tell me, George.
They pimps. They worse than a death hustler. You know, at least the death hustlers, they know they're going to get funding from the mayor. You know, and they got to keep their mouth shut in return. Don't talk about the administration. Don't talk about nothing. Just keep getting your check. They get the lowest check is $250. The most check is $2,500, and they sell their community down the drain for that little bit of money. You know, so and then it's what to make it so bad, Charles. The credit thieves, the ones who sit up there and get the six figures of money from all around, you know, for this here hustling death. They let the little groups go all to work and they get all the money.
Yeah, but I mean, is there a way to? Okay, so I know there's a difference of opinion in terms of like how they're responding to the violence crisis in Philadelphia from how you think we should respond. So I mean, but there's got to be. I want to try to make sure we minimize when we have that conversation. I think it's a legit conversation to question people's methods and strategies. I always feel like that's a legit conversation, George. But I don't want to start describing them as like death hustlers and stuff. I just think it's just people just have a different way of going about the
What do you call them? What do you call them? I mean,
you just call them like by their name. I mean, call them like, hey, this specific organization is doing something that I don't agree with. I think they should do it differently. What do you think we need to? Because with the police commissioner, I mean, there is an argument out there like, well, what happens? Do we fire the police commissioner now? Yeah. And who's that police commissioner who fills that void? Who's the person who fills that void? And what exactly is the plan?
You had the acting police commissioner. She was in the streets for like 25 years. She controlled the streets. She knew everybody. She knew who all the players were. And she was getting things done. She was only acting. So you mean to tell me she was there for like 2-3 months and she was getting things done, but you bring this woman in here because she's black. She's part of a
was she getting things done? No, I mean, because we saw spikes in violence that were happening in Philly even before Police Commissioner Outlaw came into play.
No, Charles.
So we did see that jump in violence. I mean, there was a jump in violence that was happening. There were signs of it before pandemic now.
Charles, but the point is, it's gotten worse since she's been here. We ain't talking about somebody else's clock. We're talking about her clock, what she's responsible for. That's the problem. Everybody makes excuses for her. And she has yet to show.
I'm not making. No, I'm definitely not making. I know personally I'm not making. But I do want her to work. I haven't had an opportunity to get her on. What's that?
Have you seen the plan? Have you seen her plan to show you how she's gonna move forward?
I've been questioning that too. Yeah. No, I haven't. I haven't seen much of a plan. I mean, I've seen something they call a plan. I have seen something they call a plan, but apparently they got some plan in the PDF that they sent. That's what they call a plan. I have a difference of opinion.
Abernathy showed you what he called a plan, but he got fired. Like she should be fired. Okay, Charles. The more we address up stuff and play these games and play with people, I mean, Kenny loves it because they asked for a black, they got a black. Okay, and therefore you can't talk about him. You can't go complaining to him. People got to keep their mouth shut. You hear anybody complaining about them? I mean, be honest, Charles. You never hear nobody. You rarely hear people call up here and say anything about Kenny or his administration or the police commissioner. You know why? They better not open their mouth. They better keep their mouth shut.
I do sense that hesitation. You are right about that. I do sense that hesitation. Like people are just like they're afraid to talk. I'm like, you got 110
people. They don't
people.
want to be cut off. They don't want to be cut off,
I don't get
Charles.
it. I don't get it.
What is
So
it
I
they
mean,
don't
there's
get?
that
They don't wanna be
hesitation.
cut off.
George, I gotta let you go because I need to allow someone else on. But I do agree with George on, like, there is that hesitation. We do have to have an open conversation about how low performing the Philadelphia Police Department is right now. You have a 60% chance of getting away with murder. So that's one. We had like a year, and I know, people obviously are saying, well, we had pandemic last year and that hobbled our ability to respond to the violence crisis, but there's a lot of things that the police department could be doing that's not doing. And but then on the other the other side of that conversation is you had a police commissioner who it was baptism by fire. She's not getting a whole lot of direction. I know people want to have a conversation about the police commissioner, but at the end of the day, she reports to her boss, the mayor. The mayor is definitely not urgent on this issue of violence in the city. He's not. To the point where when people were suggesting a state of emergency, his administration, is playing games of semantics on that. And it's like, it's a state of emergency. You got a lot of people getting shot and also people getting murdered, killed in the city of Philadelphia. That's a state of emergency. You got to do something about that. And more people than even in a larger city like New York, which is just a couple of hours up the road. So something more dramatic has to be done, and she's got to get more direction from her boss. And she's not. Doesn't seem like that's happening. But I do notice that one thing I am in agreement with George on. There is this general hesitation, something I'm just not plugged into, but I guess George has some insights. People are just hesitant to criticize the administration for. I mean, it's just low performance, and it's people getting shot and murdered. I don't think it's hyperbolic, or it's not an exaggeration to say that the Philadelphia Police Department and Mayor Jim Kenney, City Hall in general, is not performing well at all. Performance metrics should be applied to this situation, and people are not doing their job. And so, how do we get people to do their job on something like this? Let me go to JR out of Cheltenham, who's calling in. Well, hold on one second. Real quick, JR, before I bring you on, I got to take a quick break. JR, stay right there. Sister Murray, hold on. Let's take a break, and we'll be right back with open phone lines.
Hi, this is John.
Hi, this is Juanita, owners of JD's Auto Body and Painting. We're located at 6300 Wayne Avenue, right there at the intersection of Wayne and Washington Lane.
We really like to thank all you WURD listeners for the support that you've given our business, and we really hope to see you in the future.
JD, tell them about our products and services we have.
We have a new state-of-the-art paint shop along with our body shop and detail shop. We can help you with the dents and scratches from the winter season.
Come to JD's Auto Body and Painting. Come on out and check us out. We're still honoring that WURD 10% discount. Give us a call, 215-848-5949. Again, 215-848-5949.
Thanks again for supporting our business. We really appreciate you.
See you at JD's Auto Body and Painting.
Tune into Reality Check, hosted by Charles Ellison, Wednesdays at noon for Tech Life Steph and the latest digital tips of the week. Brought to you by Comcast. It's Women's History Month, and we want to honor Black women authors by helping you level up and read up. Join the forward movement and get a free copy of a book from one of the most influential Black women today. For a limited time, you can add The Little Book of Big Lies by Tina Lifford, She Came to Slay by Erica Dunbar, Sing Unburied Sing, a novel by Jesmyn Ward, or Acts of Faith by Jan Van Zant to your reading collection. Level up and read up. Go to wordradio.com/join now to join or renew your Forward membership and get your free book today.
Reality Check with Charles Ellison right now on WURD Radio and WURDradio.com.
All right, welcome back. Let me go to JR in Cheltenham, who's calling in for a Reality Check. JR?
Thank you, sir. How are you this morning, this afternoon?
Thank you.
Sorry.
All right. Thank you. I appreciate it.
I don't get up until afternoon. I'm still recovering from health issues. But,
okay. All right.
yeah, George always makes great points, Charles, and, he's very, diligent about his management of the city politics, and, I think, we owe him a debt of gratitude to be our enforcer or gatekeeper, so to speak. I just want to give him my appreciation, and you also for what you do to help get this community, into some kind of better condition. And so the main thing I think, that we need to address, or at least I want to address, is the mismanagement of the COVID distribution, of the COVID vaccine distribution. Because Philly, they did such a poor job, and I mean, if you think Philly did a poor job, I was waiting 2 months just to get a notice back from Montgomery County, the Montgomery County distribution, where I signed up on the 21st of January. And when I signed up, it had been available for a week before that. And just the second day that they took appointments, there was 30,000 people enrolled, or on the list, and it just was a kind of a strange situation where they had 30,000 people that enrolled on the second day, and then they're only vaccinating people at a rate of about 5,000 a week, and so I waited 2 months to get a notice, and had I waited those 2 months, I probably would have been a statistic, but I did manage to get a walk-up from the Black Doctors Consortium and got a first dose, and then I was trying to get my second dose, and then the Montgomery County notice said, well, you can only get a first dose of Pfizer, you're not getting a second dose of so they haven't responded back to me yet. They're saying, I'm going to have to reapply or whatever. And then, I know, you have limited time, but on the second point I want to make, if you can address, the mismatch, why is it unequal distribution, and then, why, certain folks, have the, like, inside track, and then, I know it all comes from the political end, but, why our mayors and our commissioners haven't done a better job of managing the situation. And just the second thing quickly, Harleman Hospital was closed during the pandemic and was supposed to be sold so that they could develop it into a condominium, and there was a problem even with that. I was just talking to ear, nose, and throat doctor down there yesterday, and they're saying, well, it's all tied up politically. They couldn't get it raised properly because of the subway underneath, and now there's still a tie-up with that situation, where they closed a hospital in the middle of a pandemic to get condominiums. It's awful.
It's just priorities are lopsided. It's mismanagement and misplacement.
Those issues. I appreciate any insight you could make for those issues.
And Brother JR, I have to let you go because I want to make some more time for others. No, there's some good issues that you actually raised. Let me before I respond to anything, let me go to Sister Murray out of Northern Liberties, who's been waiting patiently as well. Sister Murray.
Hi, Charles. How are you?
How are you doing? All right.
I'm doing good. It's always a pleasure to speak with you.
Same
Charles, you just have to take a deep breath. In between everything, just learn how to breathe. And you'll feel a whole lot better. I'm serious because you're dealing with an awful lot. We're all dealing with an awful lot. There's a lot of anger. There's a lot of frustration. There's a lot of uncertainties. There's a lot of anxiety that are running through each and every last one of us, because our lives have changed. Our lives have been disrupted, Charles. And so when you disrupt the household, what happens? Everything starts to unravel. And we're dealing with so many things at one time. But Charles, when I was a young girl growing up, at 14, I got my first job at a youth program, which was right across the street from Henneman Hospital, which was ran by the city of Philadelphia. And I'm going to tell you something. I looked so forward to every summer. I would go in there and fill out my application. My parents would sign my papers, and I would go to work every day, working with children, working with the children, and the youth program paid me. Not the place where I worked at. They didn't pay me, but the youth program paid me. And I'm going to tell you something. I enjoyed it. I had made my little bit of money It taught me responsibility, and it taught me everything that I needed in life to cope today. If it wasn't for my mom making me get out there and get a job and not sit around in the summertime and expecting her to pay for every little thing that I wanted, she was teaching me how to grow up and how to be a young woman. And she did a great job at that. And we as parents, again, Charles, we have to take responsibility. We got to get our generation back. They're not lost. We're not giving up on them. We're in a battle, and Lucifer cannot win. God is in control. He is going to bring this country back, and we're going to have an even a new life, better than before, because we don't want to go backwards. We want to go forward. There will be plenty of jobs, but we must teach our children to go to school, get your education, and start your own business. And don't stop with just that. Bring your friend in. Bring somebody else up along with you and make your business grow. And become a team player, because you can change. Every last one of us can make a change.
Yeah, we can.
We have the right guidance. Charles,
right.
It's always a pleasure. God bless you. And all to the listeners, WRD listeners, and those who don't have a membership, get your membership. We need this radio station, this platform. We need it.
Thank you for that.
And we need to not let it go. God bless.
Yeah, thank you. All right, you too. Thank you, Sister Murray. Appreciate that. And thanks for that WRD, that forward membership plug as well. Let me go to Prince out of Schuylkill, calling it for a reality check. Prince.
Hey, Charles. How are you?
Hey, what's happening? All right.
I think that, what we see is what you see. How is it that our taxpayer dollars are being collected for 200 police officers for SEPTA, and yet they operate with 120? So when you talk about the police chief shutting down stations, that's 20 jobs that you're going to lose, from everybody from taking tickets to pulling trash to maintenance to track inspectors. And so a police chief shouldn't have the autonomy to shut down a station because he has deliberately undermanned the police force. The question is, why did we authorize 200 a budget for 200 men, and he has selectively operated with only 120? And I think we as hosts and as callers doing a journalistic investigation needs to take a good look at that, because economically, a person got attacked at a SEPTA station, and one has been shut down. And if we had the manpower at those stations, perhaps those things would not have happened. And we're tired of investing or taking our taxes, paying for services that we're not receiving. And my second point is, Charles.
Well, to my understanding, they've closed down stations, like they're temporary closures, though, right? To fix elevators, also to clean up stations.
No, Charles. No. That's the spin that they're giving you. You got to understand. There's a station just a block down the street at Kensington and Allegheny, which is the worst station out of all the SEPTA stations. Why don't you shut that one down? Because if you go past here at 11 o'clock at night, you see people stooped over, drug addicted, pissing off the stairways and stuff. So you shut that one down, but you don't shut Somerset. You don't shut any of them down. You properly manned them based on us financially giving you a budget that you requested.
So you don't think, Prince, that it's appropriate, because at least the line that SEPTA is giving is like, hey, we're going to temporarily shut these down, fix elevators, also clean up. SEPTA stations do.
No, that's not what they said. They said we're going to permanently shut it down. Indefinitely. Indefinitely means we're shutting it down. The problem
indefinitely, but they're saying for maintenance, repairs, and for also cleanup. That's what they're saying.
Okay, so what happens is that...
Is there anything wrong with that?
When we do journalistic research,
right,
you go down the street and say, wait a minute, this is in far worse condition than this one. And then you go up the street and say, wait a minute, this is in far worse condition than this one.
So my understanding, so there were elevators that were out of service. There was a lot of urination in those spaces. There were actually needles. There were drug needles that were jamming up the elevators. That's at least what they're reporting, or at least what they're saying. I mean, if you got to clean that up.
It's the same.
I don't know how else to clean it up. I mean, do you keep the station in service while you try to clean that mess up?
Charles, all along Market Street is the same. All along that Market Street L is the same condition in Frankfurt. What I'm saying is that you put 20 men in there and you take it out of commission for a couple of days and you clean it up. You don't take it out of commission for the whole summer. and that's what they're doing. And we've already given SEPTA enough. They raised fares. They had tracks that were broken last year that they had to shut down services.
And they're going to get federal money too from the pandemic plan. Yeah, so we have to talk to SEPTA. I got to let you go, Prince, because I'm running on time. But no, some good points that you raised. But I'm going to look into it. Let me go to real quick before. Thanks, Prince, for calling in too. Lola out of Jenkintown, you're going to get the last word here on Reality Check today.
Okay. Yes. Thanks, Charles. Thank you for taking my call. I know everybody wants to say something. I'm gonna just keep it real short. I had some other stuff to say, but I just want to say about Colorado. I wanted to say that Elijah McClain was killed for walking home, and they have had 3 or 4 mass shootings where each one of those men who were white were able to walk out. And this young boy, his family is still searching for some type of closure or someone arrested or held accountable for this young man's murder. And this, when we have another mass shooting that just happened yesterday, and all of these men are allowed to just walk out, just walk out, handcuffed, fine, and a boy walking home getting a soda was murdered for no reason. So I'll call back tomorrow to say what else I wanted to say, but I just wanted to put that out, that I just want this world, these laws have to change for our young men, for you, for everybody, because look what we're looking at, that people can mass shoot up places, and if they're white, Georgia, everywhere, but if you're black, you definitely going to get shot or killed or suffocated and then filled with ketamine, even if you aren't doing anything. All right, Charles, thank you so much.
Yeah, I mean, it's that's a discussion worth having, so like what's the difference between unarmed black men, like Elijah McClain, he was killed by police last year in Aurora, Colorado, which is a suburb of Denver. What's the difference between unarmed black men and highly armed terrorists who inflicting mass devastation and destruction on what are supposed to be safe public spaces? Like, what's the difference? And we need to start asking. I think that is a good preemptive conversation for any city, for any local community, to start asking their law enforcement agencies about, like what's the difference there? Like, when you guys get into those situations, how are you computing that? Because we understand how you are when you're with some of us and you get into a situation and we're unarmed and we're just kind of just innocently existing in a space, and then you have a bad day, or you say we fit the profile of whatever, and then you kill us, but we're unarmed, but then you can't, so I think that's a legitimate conversation that has to come up. And then it gets into, deeper conversations about, like, our state and local law enforcement agencies, are they on the same page as the federal government is about this rising domestic terror threat, this national security threat? And, that's what that situation is. We're going to get more information, obviously, on the suspect over the course of the day and overnight. We'll talk about it more tomorrow, as we find out more about it. But I think that those conversations are valid. All right, that wraps this Tuesday edition. Thanks, Lola, for calling. Thanks for making that point. We're wrapping this Tuesday edition of Reality Check here on WURD. I'm Charles Ellis. I want to thank Mike C. as well. We head into, I believe it's The Source. That's coming up next here on WURD, Philly and beyond, which is stay sharp, stay smart, but more importantly, stay safe out there, please. Take care. I'll see you tomorrow, God willing.